Tears of the Kingdom is about to release, and with that, an era on this channel is coming to an end. If you don't know how this channel started, the first video that ever got a lot of views for me was a commentated any percent run, where I explained all of the strats that speedrunners do while playing. And I thought the best way to close this Breath of the Wild chapter on the channel was to do that again, but this time for my very favorite speedrun category, all shrines. All Shrines is what truly got me hooked on the game when I was watching Japanese runner ZDI run it in 2019. A run that flies through all of Hyrule and masters all trials easily was just so cool to watch. Back then, it took runners 8 hours and that was already super fast, but this run has changed. It's changed a lot, to the extent where it's arguably the most technical speedrun in the whole game. So if you somehow missed it, Tears of the Kingdom has leaked, and I wanted to avoid spoilers for my playthrough, which, by the way, I'm streaming this Friday, and will then upload on this Limcube VODs YouTube channel over here. So if you want to catch up when you're done yourself, that's where you can go. Also, while we are at it, I am 5,000 subscribers away from 100k, so if you want to help me get there, I would appreciate it if you subscribed. You won't regret it, as I'm planning to put up a ton of Tears of the Kingdom content here. But anyway, I was avoiding spoilers, so I went offline from all social media and didn't stream, and instead focused on getting my goal in the All Shrines speedrun, beating them all in under 5 hours, which puts you into the top 10 on the leaderboard. And after some grinding, I did it. I beat All Shrines in 4 hours, 53 minutes and 13 seconds. And I'm not gonna lie, I can do much better, but I'm out of time until Tears of the Kingdom, so that's what I'm happy with for now. And exactly this run I want to showcase today. I will edit out all the loading screens and bigger mistakes for better pacing and explain every trick and mechanic as we go. If you want to watch the full run without commentary, I will link it in the description. But now, grab a drink or snack or both and let me take you through my favorite and final Breath of the Wild speedrun. Alright, and welcome to All Shrines. In this run, I'm going to be getting all 120 shrines, like I've already mentioned in the intro. I cut out bigger mistakes and also loading screens, so this run will be a more easy to watch experience and we can get straight into the information and stuff. So first of all, this run is done on the Switch on the most up-to-date version of the game, 1.6. All glitches that you are seeing are still possible on the Switch if you were to do them right now. The Switch is also the fastest system for this game, especially because of loading times. Ever since that update, the Switch basically introduced some power method to load. This also actually helped the Odyssey speedrun out. This is why we're going to be using the Switch. And you will quickly be able to tell that I am doing the speedrun in English, which is something that you might not be familiar with. Any percent is probably the most popular speedrun where you just beat the game, and that one is done in French, but for reasons I'll get into later, English is fastest here, but actually quite a bit, by like 20 seconds or so. So as always, we start in the Shrine of Resurrection, where we are gonna have to grab our Sheikah Slate. And again, English actually loses around 4 seconds here, but obviously you can hear English text happening at this time. You can also see the timer coming up right now. In my recording, I actually forgot to display it for a little bit. It starts basically when you gain control of Link. Also, speedruns nowadays actually are required to be started from the home screen because we've figured out that in the like title screen of the game, several things can already preload. So to get everybody on the exact same even ground, we start our timer when Link starts moving. And then this is already a quite known glitch. This is the first scope clip out of the Shrine of Resurrection. You line up in a specific angle, spam the scope button, and then you will be able to clip out of the opening room. Now, what's interesting is that in any percent we would climb to the right side here, essentially skipping the first cutscene of the game. But you could just see Link run past that second door. There's usually another 40-second cutscene here of that second door that you have to watch. But by clipping out of bounds, we can skip that and we get to see this very nice leaf, the leaf of the wild. And this is actually important. You want to see this leaf at this time during the cutscene. Otherwise, you won't be able to do the next little trick. But yeah, clipping out of bounds here is still faster because you skip the second door. Now, normally the good thing in any percent is when you skip this cutscene, time of day does not progress, and you can basically control the weather a little bit better. You don't have to deal with skeleton enemies as much. However, in all shrines we actually need the time to progress. I can give you an example. Maybe if you think about the shrine in Rito Village, that you have to shoot a platform at noon on, because it displays a heart on the ground. It's a little bit past noon technically. But we need time of day to be active. So here, by doing a side hop to the left, I was able to clip back into the game world. Basically immediately, you could almost not even tell what was happening. So I essentially just effectively skipped that 40-second second door cutscene by performing the Shrine of Resurrection clip, saving quite a bit of time. I also picked up a mushroom and a stick. They will be important for later for a very big item duplication glitch. Coming up to this Bokoblin camp, the most important part here is that I grabbed this shield. The shield will be needed for multiple threats on the Great Plateau and just for the early game in general. And I'm also going to be picking up the seared steak here for some early game food, and also chilies and more mushrooms. Now, I can actually only eat 3 of these chilies, as I still need 3 mushrooms and 3 spicy peppers for that item duplication glitch later, that I'm not going to be explaining super in depth because of how intricate it is. And then you can see me do some shield surfing here, it saves some time over running down that slope, and then we get stopped by Zelda. In case you didn't know this cutscene right here is basically mandatory. It doesn't matter where you go or if you spend too much time even in the starting area, eventually it will play. We have never found a way to skip it. Now we're going to be doing our first shield clip by jumping on this slope here with our shield. Link gets into a state called Skew, where if you shield jump again and unequip your shield, that Skew will push him through walls. You'll see that a couple times in this run. I probably won't have time to explain it extensively, but essentially by landing on a slope, we can store that animation and can then clip through walls. Immediately afterwards, we are performing the bow lift smuggle slide, our newest movement trick in the game. I think it took me a little bit here, actually a second attempt to jump up there, because you need Link to kind of step up on a step when you get into this sliding state to start actually moving around. And then by flicking your stick from left to right, you can speed up even more. This is how we get to the bomb shrine now. Later, I'll probably have some time to more explain the intricacies of the BLSS, as another shield clip is already happening here into the bomb shrine. But obviously the early game here is super fast paced. There's not much time to slow down and explain every trick in detail. Just know that the sliding trick is incredibly powerful and probably our second most movement tech in the run, with the most used movement tech being one that we are about to obtain here, because we need the remote bomb rune for it. Now this gives me some time to talk about this trick. This is called the wind bomb and was found in 2019 by a glitch hunter called Satugashi. He was kind of messing around with how bombs and bullet time interact together. Completely changed the entire speedrunning world. This actually has ascended from just a speedrunning trick to a trick that even casual playthroughs sometimes, or like challenge runs, you will find people use them all around YouTube basically. And this is the first one of the run. I actually got the perfect angle here. We also refer to this as the gamer wind bomb, where you go all the way across the shrine and get to interact with the monk afterwards. Now again, this trick has obviously completely transformed the way we speedrun. Not only can this be used in shrines, but it can be used everywhere on the overworld. And once we get the paraglider, the trick becomes even more powerful, as we get to take the speed from the wind bomb and transfer it over to the gliding state. The old man here will always essentially intercept us here. There is a set kind of combination of text choices you want to make here to make sure to get the fastest text. Select the second option, then the first option twice, and then the second option again at the end. Just like so. And then he gets a little bit confused here, because you are supposed to have already obtained the tower at this point, as this was meant to be your way of getting into the shrine. And I will actually be getting the tower now, which is going to freak out the old man a little bit more. But you'll see here, I'm setting up another one of those slides to get over to the tower. And people still ask this sometimes, like, why is it fast to clip into the shrines? It almost seems like the same speed to just open a door. Not sure if you could tell, but the door to the bomb shrine was actually still closed. I wouldn't have been able to open it normally, because what activates these doors to be able to be opened is activating this tower. in any percent by clipping it to all 4 of the shrines, we get to entirely skip this tower. But since I'm going to be doing 120 shrines in the speedrun, it does make sense to eventually get the tower. It's just faster to get it here between bombs and magnesis kind of on the way. Now, an interesting mechanic here is that normally when you get this tower, there's actually an invisible cone wall around it to avoid you from skipping your supposedly first meeting with the old man. Yes, you can technically run into him just after the Shrine of Resurrection, but if you're trying to escape from this tower, even without the paraglider, you would actually eventually hit an invisible wall. But we have found a way around it, and that basically allows us to save some time, and you'll see that in a second. It does make for some interesting visuals. If you do jump off this tower here and try to interact with the old man at this point, he will actually not be able to appear in the cutscene as he is stuck on top of the tower and only the paraglider will kind of sit on the ground awkwardly. But here's the trick. Essentially, by having the bomb rune already acquired and running back to this part of the tower, we can actually wind bomb just over this invisible wall. And the important step is we don't have the paraglider yet, so by looking to the left to the Forest of Spirits, I make the game lag intentionally, which will prematurely end the wind bomb, which will then allow me to perform a fall damage cancel out of this wind bomb. So I make the game lag intentionally, it doesn't know what to do anymore, it loses the coordinates, Link gets to have control again, and then I throw this stick away and unequip my shield. This resets the position that the game thinks Link started falling from to the position where I threw away the weapon, which then allows me to basically survive this fall. And not only that, but it obviously also sends me right to the door of the Magnesis Shrine. So this is basically the most optimal way at this point to get the tower while still going fast. And again, it's going to be extremely useful because not only will it unlock every single shrine door in the world, it will also enable the warping function for them. So to make more efficient routes, we want to be warping around, so the Great Plateau Tower is definitely super useful. There's not too much to say in the Magnesis Shrine. You can technically go for wind bombs here that save less than 10 seconds, so between 5 and maybe 7 seconds of the ideal wind bomb. But in a run that's between 4 and 5 hours long, usually it's wise to not go for super risky strategies that don't have a super big reward, as you basically want to try and play as consistently as possible. So by just running through the shrine, we take it safe, and we still go relatively fast. I actually ended up getting a gold split here, probably due to a good wind bomb to the shrine. Now from here, we'll set up the slide again. And this is basically a glitch that uses something called bow lock. By performing these inputs at the start here, we make it so that Link cannot let go of the bow anymore. But this glitch, found by Legend of Link, combines this bow-locked state while also holding an object. Normally this bow-locked state makes it so that you can slide around on the ground. But by also holding this bomb, it actually pushes Link around through the air. You can actually see it quite well here. By moving Link from left to right, this bomb hitbox is essentially constantly colliding with Link, who is in this bow-locked sliding state, which will then again propel him forward. I actually got a relatively, suboptimal slide here towards this tree on the other side, but it did work out. You don't usually want to reset your speedruns early on in this category, as it's a long run and you can always play better after all. You could actually see a quick cut here, as when I got here first in the run, I was trying to climb up this tree and fell down. So you'll see some of these cuts throughout the run, just to make, again, the explanation a little bit more seamless. If you want to see the full run with all of the mistakes, I will link that in the description. It's gonna be uploaded to speedrun.com, just to be on the leaderboard. Now, I didn't really get to talk about it there, but what we did just there is another wind bomb from the top of the tree. And this is probably the hardest wind bomb on the Great Plateau. You need just enough height to clear that cliff side to be able to land next to the shrine. And people always ask, how do you not take damage here? But this is basically just for, because of how the fall damage in this game is calculated. The game essentially takes the starting point of where Link started to do the wind bomb from, and then looks at the highest arch, highest point of the arch of the wind bomb, right? Which was basically just on top of the shrine. And that's, as soon as basically your coordinates start going like negative, not negative, but as soon as you lose height coordinates, that's when it starts calculating the fall damage. So because the highest point of the wind bomb wasn't very far away from where I ended up landing, I didn't take fall damage there. That's essentially the explanation. A quick shield jump here over this gap in stasis is going to save me some time of removing the boulder. This is a classic strategy. And you could also see me pick up that hammer, because this is actually another shrine where you can technically, if you wanted to, you could just wind bomb to the end there, but we do need the hammer, not only for this launch, but for other strategies later on. Actually, I'm going to be keeping this hammer basically the entire run, using the stasis rune here immediately to charge up the boulder, ride it up to the snowy area, and then getting some stick drift. I actually do need to look into a new Pro controller before Tears of the Kingdom. This is something that happens a lot, especially with all of the stick flicking, but I actually did not turn around there. I kind of had flick back on my stick there. If you play a lot on the Pro controller, you probably had that happen yourself. Another slide here will take us from this tree stump all the way over to Cryonis, which sits just on the opposite side here of the River of the Dead. And it's going to be the last shrine. I will say, when watching this right now, I do realize how seamless this run seems without any loading times. Basically, if you're interested, the way I did it is by... when you enter the elevator here, you get a little bit of a fade out, and then I basically, usually, this is great, cut over to Link leaving the elevator again. Most of the time you will see this looks like this load still managed to slip through. But most of the time you'll see me immediately ending up in the elevator inside the shrine. Now, I do remember in Cryonis I actually had a mistake happen, and this is due to something called ragdoll state. You will see this very often in this run, but every time you perform a shield clip or shield jump in which you remove your shield as you are jumping, which, if you remember, is what I did in stasis to make it past the boulder, you get into a glitched state called ragdoll state. If you then try to wind bomb, you have to do what you'll see me do here first, a neutral shield jump where you unequip your shield. This makes it so that you can launch again. For some reason, when I did this in the run, it didn't work yet, and Link just stopped immediately mid-air, and unfortunately I fell down and didn't have enough health to survive the fall. But keep an eye out for me seemingly randomly bombing Link, which is going to get rid of that ragdoll state after shield clipping. You'll see this especially often later in the tests of strengths. But we're almost getting to the end of the Great Plateau here. I have completed the Cryonis Shrine and can now meet up with the old man to get the paraglider where the run really begins. There's kind of like 3 stages in this run. Stage 1, Great Plateau. Stage 2, Preparation, which is what we are about to head into. This is where I'm going to be setting up everything I need for the big item duplication glitch, which is going to allow this run to be incredibly fast and seamless. I'll talk about it when we get there. But we are about to basically go from the Great Plateau stage into the preparation stage, where we'll be completing some shrines still along the way, but also collecting important items. Now this would pretty much be the last fall damage cancel of the run. I do not have the glider yet here, so by unequipping the shield, I was able to again reset my fall damage, land on the roof there, and then make it into the cutscene. Also important that I blew up the bomb behind me, as I will need it again shortly. From this point on, we have the paraglider, and in case if you didn't know this yet, the paraglider is what removes all of the blocked areas. Basically, the only safe area to be in the early game is the Great Plateau and some small surroundings. Everything else, if you touch the ground there, if you enter these areas, Link will just void out, go back to the Great Plateau. Getting the paraglider is what makes the entire world basically available. And then you'll see me climb up to the roof here and set up another slide from this step. You could see it here again. After getting into the bow-locked state, all I need is for Link to do a little step-up animation, and by jumping into the higher part of the roof there, that's exactly what I get. And I start a slide. This slide will take me to Mount Satori. This is kind of infamously known as a very great location to stack up on a bunch of items. I actually won't get too much here, but especially I I will be getting a shrine. So usually when you think of this category, whatever you want to do, you always want to be moving towards a shrine. So even if you're trying to get items, it wouldn't be wise to go to Farron, go get durians and teleport back. You want to be efficient. So by going to Mount Satori here, I will be able to pick up some items and then also complete the shrine Moglatan on the top of it. Lifting up this rock eventually, after the game manages to load it because of how quickly I moved here, will spawn in a diamond. I will pick that up and use for some money in a little bit. And then another wind bomb will take me to this area over here where we can find a bunch of Endura carrots. Now, normally they're pretty valuable to be cooked and made into stamina food, but they also provide you with 2 full hearts. So again, I will be using this for early game food. Later on, this will no longer be needed because I will be having a bunch of fairies. You'll see it when we get there. And then here, this wind bomb doesn't save too much time, but as I don't have speed food yet, my running speed is kind of bad. So by wind bombing to the shrine, we save like 2 seconds. Here you could see the cutout load, immediately entering the shrine essentially. Now, you'll see a backflip wind bomb here. By placing the square bomb first, then jumping up on the elevator again and timing your bullet time this way, you get a very controlled fast wind bomb, which gives me just enough height to clear the door of the Moglatan shrine here and immediately get to the end. You won't see these wind bombs often anymore. I think this run has 2 more of them, and it always is important when you need a specific amount of speed. And this was one of the examples. Now, after the Moglatan shrine, the next shrine is basically right next to this area. You're struggling a little bit here to find the shield, which you always have to unequip in order to start your sliding process. But this is going to be the Sheem Dagos shrine, which is just down here. So by sliding, all we need to do is from this point fall. And this is one of these shrines that is underground until we complete a puzzle, which in this case, it's just going to shoot through these 2 rings. I need to aim a little bit higher here as my bow has pretty bad range, but I do have a visual cue there. And these cutscenes here are unskippable. I did not cut them out because I feel like otherwise the run would be too broken off and I still need some time to explain things. But these shrines are going to be incredibly important to the entire run's idea, especially later on, because we are going to be able to enter shrines like this that are underground without getting them on top of the surface. In this case, it's not worth it. This trick requires quite a bit of setup. So in this case, it's not worth it because it spawns basically immediately. But for other shrines, for example, like the Lagnaroki shrine in Kakariko later, which is one that's underground until you do a bunch of quests. For those shrines, that trick is going to be not only worth it, but like needed. It saves way too much time. In fact, for example, skipping the Kakariko quest shrine and some others is going to allow us to do things like skipping the camera room. So incredibly important and incredibly time saving. Now, this split in my sub 5 run that I'm showcasing here was almost the point where I reset it. Because I tried to get something called a super launch here, which is making the game lag again intentionally and then getting a really quick launch by kind of confusing the game's coordinates. But when I landed here, and you could see me make the cut just then, I had like a huge time loss. I really tried hard to get a wind bomb, but this area is actually surprisingly too laggy. If you ever run into too much lag, what will happen is that your wind bomb will stop immediately in its tracks. So I lost a bunch of time there, and if I ever get a chance to run this again, I will save so much time here. Now, entering Zalta Wa, very easy shrine, and you see a lot of shrines itself will be going kind of like this way. You kind of step up anywhere where you can go into bullet time and then immediately perform a wind bomb to skip the puzzle, which might sound boring, but it's still pretty fun to do. This is kind of just how shrines go. I will say that what makes this run particularly fun to me is all of the tricks that you'll see later and the movement from shrine to shrine. Here you can basically also see me as soon as I get the shrine completion here and the next fade out, I will immediately cut over to Link leaving the shrine again for better pacing. Otherwise we would be sitting through literally 240 loading screens, and actually more than that because of warping. If you think about it, there's 120 shrines that you have to enter and leave, so a bunch of loading times that would kind of be annoying and boring to sit through. Now this is Noya Neha, and it's going to be our first test of strength shrine, but I do need to be careful here. As you could see, the game sometimes can be slow at loading things in, and in that case it was those thorns. The wall there was actually not accessible because there were rocks blocking the entrance, so I had to wait for the thorns to load in to time my bomb explosion to get into the cave and then into the shrine. Now what we do in these tests of strengths is a very strange wind bomb. We place one bomb on the opposite side of the gate, backflip from here and then place our second bomb to line up a nice bomb angle to be able to go over the trigger for the Guardian to spawn here. So what this allows us is to skip the Guardian from spawning, we don't have to deal with it. And by doing this specific setup here, found by Pistonite, we are able to clip into the pillar next to the door, and then you're actually stuck inside the pillar. By doing another one of those shield clips, we can clip through that one as well and skip the test of strength. So ideally, this is how every single test of strength will go. It's noteworthy that with my route for this category, the minor test of strengths are relatively easy to fight, but this is how you want it to look like. Now here I take Magnesis and use it to basically make these bomb barrels explode to burn down the thorns, because I need the path to be clear for what I'm about to do next. I'm setting up another slide, basically by using the elevator of the shrine itself as a little step up, which will then allow me to slide through the door to our next location. Now here in the early game especially, even if some of those slides may look a little bit slow, they are quite powerful because I don't have infinite food or ferries yet, and BLSSs, is what the slides are called, don't require me to lose any hearts. Here you can see another great example of the game being pretty slow at catching up and loading. And I will be landing on this part of the wall here where I will find a chest that contains a knight's bow. I won't be using this bow at all for its strength or its power. Instead, what makes this bow good is that it's metal. And one of our first locations we're going to be visiting is Elden Volcano. I already mentioned that when you do these slides, you cannot unequip your bow. So if you're trying to do a slide in a hot region, your bow will inevitably burn down, which will then end the slide. So by getting a metal bow, when we head up to Elden, this will no longer be a concern. That's the entire point of the knight's bow here. And then I will perfectly slide into the docks here, which gives me just enough height to reach the area up here, where another shrine will be waiting for us. This time it's the Sars Kosar shrine. And this is another one of the shrines that is technically underground, but there is no way it would be worth it to perform this glitch I'm going to be doing later to enter underground shrines, as all I need to do is take an arrow, light it on fire, and light up the big torch. Now Sars Kosar is another test of strength, and this time it's a major test of strength. So I can never have it happen here that I miss this wind bomb. If this was to happen, I am essentially forced to reload, as obviously I don't have the equipment to deal with this guy. Even if I pulled out the most clean combat gameplay, I simply wouldn't have the damage to deal with it, unless I would just use bombs, in which case I would be sitting here for 5 minutes fighting a single Guardian. So again, you place a square bomb behind the gate. In this case, I actually did that shield jump again to clear this ragdoll glitch I mentioned. And then you want to line up Link with this wall, backflip from here, place the second bomb, and time it just right. In this case, I actually did it slightly wrong and I hit the ceiling, but thankfully I still cleared the cutscene trigger. The cutscene trigger, the way that works for these Guardians, it's kind of sitting in front of the opening. It has some height to it, kind of like a box, but if you make it over that box, you can avoid the Guardian from spawning. I set up another shield clip of the same setup and make it through the pillar. And again here, this is another way to get rid of this ragdoll glitch. By landing on your shield and then unequipping it, you kind of flop over, that ragdoll glitch is removed, and you can now go on again and do all of your launches. The reason I decided to do that here instead of bombing myself is again because I'm very restricted in terms of my health, and I don't want to lose hearts for no reason, as later when I get essentially infinite fairies, I can bomb Link without any worries. Now, here I'm actually going to be running through the castle, which is a little bit dangerous, as I only have 3 hearts, and these Lizalfos here would, if they were to hit me, just kill me. But I will be wind bombing out immediately, as this gets me closer to Korok Forest, which is where we are headed next. And on my way, and this is very important, I pick up this chest that contains 3 ancient arrows. These 3 ancient arrows are what I'm going to be using in the item duplication glitch to essentially corrupt them up to like 3,000 ancient arrows. I don't need 3,000 ancient arrows, it's just how the glitch works, but getting around 50 or so for beating the game at the very end is actually going to save me a bunch of time, so it ends up being worth it. Then I go over here, and this is an important location because this chest contains a Nadra's scale. And by picking up this scale, I will be able to skip having to free the dragon Nadra later on, which saves multiple minutes of time by simply going to the castle first before heading over to the Spring of Wisdom. And then perfectly down here, we find a Dinral scale. So even though Dinral would technically be flying around on the world, it's still faster to get the scale from here. In fact, Dinral actually wouldn't actually fly around in the world. You won't see a single dragon fly around here because we never even talk to Impa. In case you didn't know, there's 2 triggers in the game that start the dragons flying around in the world. Number 1 is initially talking to Impa in Kakariko Village, and number 2 is beating all divine beasts. I won't be doing either, so by getting these scales, we save a bunch of time. You may wonder what we'll do about Farosh, that will come in later. Here I need to do a specific wind bomb, a turn wind bomb, which gives me a perfect amount of speed to make it into Korok Forest before the game is able to realize what's going on. So I can enter Korok Forest extremely quickly, land perfectly at the Rusty Shield, which is the ending of the first puzzle here for the Kun Sidash shrine. Usually, if you go to the shrine, there's several of these trees that have a metal boulder in their mouth, which are supposed to lead you to this location. But by going from the castle, picking up the useful scales, I'm able to clear the fog and immediately continue with the puzzle. I pick up the Rusty Shield again, as it's actually important for later. Again, it's another metal shield, which I need in Eldin. And then I pick up this chest, which I need for the next part of the puzzle. It can actually also be used to push the boat through the water here, saving some time in the process. Very nice. I will get rid of the potlet here soon, as for the glitch I'm about to do, you can actually only have 1 shield in your inventory. Otherwise, at least with the setup that Kai made for me, she's a very smart community member when it comes to making these setups, we only use 1 shield. So that's why I'm dropping it here. And then again, you look at my gear now, it's full metal, so I don't have to worry about losing anything when I go up to the volcano anymore, and I can just zoom around there because I will have, again, essentially infinite ferries, which you'll see soon. But entering Kun Sidash here, the one important thing is that I pick up the contents of this chest. This chest contains a giant ancient core. And I will be using that for a speed potion that I will also duplicate in the process to essentially get infinite running level 3 speed buffs. Despite the fact that we wind bomb around quite a bit in this run, we also still walk a lot. So making these speed potions is actually important for the overall speed of the run. This is the second backflip wind bomb you'll see. There's only 1 more to come at this point. And this is once again because we need the perfect amount of speed to clear the fog inside Korok Forest here without getting voided out and losing progress. Now, this is where another pretty big mistake in the run happened, unfortunately. You are supposed to pick up frogs here, which you'll see in a second. These frogs spawn in around this area. You can see the frog right there, and you can also see that when I'm about to approach them, my bomb, they actually disappear, right? So the frog is not there. Now they're there again, and the bomb clearly hit the frog, right? It clearly did, but it just didn't kill them. Like, it just didn't work. And this is because Korok Forest. You probably already know how bad Korok Forest is known for its lag. So I actually lost my frogs there, which made it so that I had to go back to this location after the next shrine to get another chance at collecting them, which I did successfully do. But again, unfortunate time loss here. It's fine though. So you could also see me eat my chilies, which earlier I mentioned ideally I wouldn't have to do. This was because I did some mistakes in the early game. All that matters for the item duplication glitch is that I have 4 materials of any kind that I can sell and use to corrupt. Again, I won't be going into the mechanics of the item glitch here too much, as they're really, really complicated, but we just need 4 different materials, and the chilies were supposed to be one of them. Instead, I will end up buying some materials in the Korok Forest shop instead, which loses some time, but it's not a big deal. And this is huge, what you just saw here. This is the last backflip wind bomb that I can think of for now. You're essentially able to skip the entire super annoying Oki escort mission by talking to the guy to start the quest and then doing this perfect speed wind bomb exactly to where the shrine is, and you don't have to ever deal with the annoyance of Oki potentially spotting you. This quest was one that I absolutely hated, personally, casually. I remember there was this one point where Oki gets like attacked by wolves and he's like, oh no, please help me. And if you then decide to help him, he still gets upset at you and sends you back to the very start. I was mad. Now, this void out here, it is intentional. It's gonna put me back to the beginning of the quest, which is a perfect spot for our next wind bomb, which is gonna be from this rock to the top of the deco tree. And maybe some of you know this, but there is some stuff on top of the deco tree. There's a quest, which is a little bit of a quiz. And then there is some materials which are going to be super important for me. And those materials will be fairies. Now, I only need to collect a single fairy here, which I will then use to, and I'm careful here to not lose my stamina and miss the fairy, just like I missed the frogs earlier. This fairy will be corrupted, so I will have 999 fairies instead of 1. We will quickly go over how that exactly works in a bit here, as this is basically going to be our next step after the next shrine. But it was just important that I picked up that fairy. Now here, I slowly approach the section of the frogs again, time my bomb throw a little bit better, and this time the frogs were loaded incorrectly, and I can pick them up. Now these are basically my ingredients for the speed potion. The hot-footed frog, together with that giant ancient core, is going to make for a 7-minute level 3 speed elixir, which again, I will be duplicating in order to go even faster. Now here there's 2 more frogs. I only need to collect 1, which is going to be this one. And then I'm going to be heading into the Keoruk Shrine. Because I ran out of food though, I needed to collect these 2 Hylian mushrooms. Here technically I only needed to collect 1, as wind bombs always only do 1 damage. But much better than resetting the run here. At this point the run was basically even, but we are about to head from the preparation stage into the fun stage of the run, so I at least wanted to give this one a shot, and I'm glad that I did, because the gameplay is about to get a lot better, at least movement wise. Otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do the run in under 5 hours. And it just feels great to get to this stage of the run. Because, and again, this is obviously another quick wind bomb clear. It just feels great to get to the stage, because once you get your fairies duplicated here, the run gets so much more fun. Now again, the mechanics of the IST item duplication are very intricate. At first I get rid of my spirit orbs here, so they don't clunk my inventory and turn them into stamina. And you can already see that I sped up the gameplay here. Because what I'm about to do is just incredibly complicated. I sell my diamond, pick up more materials to perform the glitch, and then do a mixture of item smuggling and specifically selling these items to the shopkeeper here. This will essentially delete item slots and confuse the inventory. And then I do some really weird, seemingly random stuff where I pick up items, drop them on the floor. This confuses the inventory in a way that what the game will do is that it essentially will take values from items like the shield and the hammer and write them onto the items. So it will confuse the game. It will read the durability value from the shield, and you'll see it here when I'm about to sell my items to this dude. I now have 999 fairies. You can see it there for a second. Also the speed elixir, not the one that I just sold, but the other one, stacks infinitely. I was able to sell the other one, which, due to the fact that it was made with a giant ancient core, was worth 600 rupees. I cook the razor shroom and apple that I bought in the store to make an attack up potion for the end game, and you'll see here when I drink the speed elixir, it didn't actually disappear. It's essentially a infinitely stacked speed elixir, which doesn't ever run out, so I can constantly refresh my speed buff. I have 999 fairies, so I can't effectively die anymore. I sped up the glitch there. This took me like 4 minutes to do, and now I'm ready to completely speed through the entire run. But again, what happens is essentially the inventory gets confused. It looks into the durability value of the shield and then writes it into the count of the fairies, into the count of the ancient arrows, and the count of the speed elixir. Those are the things that I just corrupted. I have infinite speed food, infinite fairies, and essentially infinite ancient arrows, which is going to make the rest of the run not a breeze, because it's an incredibly difficult tech and hard movement to do, but it makes it much, much smoother to play through. Now, this is a test of wood. Don't get any ideas. What we need to do here, first of all, is we need to run to a choo-choo enemy. This choo-choo enemy is going to be crucial for the next big glitch, which is basically happening after the next shrine. And this is what I was already teasing. It's the shrine coordinate warp, which is going to allow us to enter shrines that are still underground. From here, I'll perform another wind bomb to the actual shrine, Makhalan, which awaits you at the end of the Test of Wood. Now let's talk about shrine coordinate warps. The shrine coordinate warp that I am about to do here was actually found by me in a challenge run. If you ever watched my video on how to do all shrines without runes, it wasn't a tutorial, it was like a challenge run that I did. This is where we found this glitch. And this wouldn't be possible with the help of people like Pistonite and Binks and Futurelander, people that suggested this. Is always a community effort, but it was found in my challenge run. Normally the shrine coordinate warp works by confusing the game into thinking you're entering a shrine and then going somewhere else and then playing that animation of entering the shrine. The game will then enter the shrine Link is closest to, even if it is underground. But what we found in the challenge run is that there are certain shrines, like this one, Makhalan, that have an infinite radius and where the game can remember the fact that you were supposed to enter a shrine. Usually this radius is limited, but this shrine in particular, and some other ones later, have an infinite unload radius. So you can go to whatever shrine in the world you want, play the cutscene with the trick that you'll see, and then enter shrines that are still underground. The reason this is the case is because these shrines, for example, only exist after meeting a certain condition. The one we just left, for example, only appeared in the world once we talked to the Korok to start the Test of Wood. That makes this weird shenanigan happen, that the unload radius for the elevator is global. Now, it being global usually doesn't mean that we want to go to the opposite side of the map, with some examples being that way later. In this case, we're going to be heading up straight to the top of Elden Volcano. Now, it is important that you don't look back at this point. If I was to look back at the shrine, the game would remember the fact that I was supposed to enter it, and it would forget the cutscene, so I have to constantly look away and make my way to the Keira Ma shrine here by doing some wind bombs. I'm also going to be starting to take some burn damage here, which I need to be careful about, but thankfully I have metal gear and essentially infinite fairies. Now, the Keira Ma shrine, you'll see it here. It's usually a shrine where you have to start a quest in Goron City and then bring a flaming rock roast up to this mine shaft, which will recover our little Goron brother, to then open up the shrine. Instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to drop this choo-choo jelly on the ground. This will turn the choo-choo jelly to fire choo-choo jelly. Aim a shock arrow on this item box. And yeah, that was kind of weird. So it was a fire choo-choo jelly. I shot a shock arrow onto it and then immediately picked it up. What happened is I picked up a fire choo-choo, but it turned into shock right after, making the item text box for it disappear so quickly that the game remembered that I was supposed to enter a shrine, but didn't have enough time to check the other conditions because the item box was so quick that it instead just played the enter shrine animation. Also doing some quick double wind bombs here to clear the greedy hill. But again, let me explain this one more time. So, I was about to enter the Makhalan shrine in the Korok forest down there, right? But I jumped out of the animation of entering the elevator. Then I went all the way up here to Keira Ma and played a super quick text box with that clip, little trick, I mean, which made it so that the game was like, oh, you're supposed to enter a shrine. Now, usually if the text box was on screen for longer, what would happen would be like, oh, okay, but like, you're already super far away, so we're gonna forget that this is happening and just like leave you here. But because the text box was so fast, it just panicked and was like, oh, you're supposed to enter a shrine. And the shrine I entered was this invisible shrine behind me that you can't see, the Keira Ma shrine, and this skips a ton. Also, I needed to clip out of bounds here because the wall, the rock that this guy is mining on is still there. I wouldn't have been able to leave any other way, so instead I had to clip out of bounds. You could also see me bomb Link again due to the ragdoll glitch I talked about. But yeah, this saves a bunch of time because we didn't have to bring the rock roast. In fact, we never have to enter Goron City, which makes it so that we can also skip the cutscene that usually plays when you first enter the city, introducing a divine beast. We'll only get one of those cutscenes, actually, and that's gonna be in Rito Village. And then I just wind bomb up here to the Dakako shrine. This is a super simple one. Quick wind bomb up to the monk. We'll take care of it. Now, this is the SCW trick, and we started out with one of the most intricate ones. There's gonna be literally like 15 of them in the run, and they will always be used to enter shrines that are essentially still underground and would take a bunch of time to get otherwise. Now here you can technically see me enter Goron City, but in this area where the shrine is, the cutscene for Rodania is not active. So this is the only time I touch the ground in this area, and it makes it so that, again, I don't have to talk to the Goron to start the quest, I don't have to sit through the Rodania cutscene, I don't have to bring the rock roast up there. So all things considered, entering the Keiramaya shrine with that elevator trick saves a bunch of time. Now we made it to Swinging Flame. We basically make our own little step up here by placing that barrel, wind bombing from it up top. And this small stretch was actually thought of by Smallland, where you just stasis this button instead after doing this wind bomb because your bomb is still on cooldown. I remember when this was back in the day when Smallland was still running old shrines. Good times. But this is the Shemosar shrine. Very quickly completed. Now next up is going to be the Shoraha shrine. And this one is one I personally hate, because the wind bomb in it is essentially a coin flip, and you'll see it when we get there. As usual, and this is basically the #1 reason for the metal equipment, we're going to be doing a slide here over the very hot area of the abandoned North Mine. Unavo will not be safe this run, I'm sorry for the Unavo fans. It would just lose us time. Gliding perfectly into the crab cave here. And then entering. And now casually this shrine is great. A really big puzzle using the blue flame. But this wind bomb here, you have to ragdoll perfectly against the ledge, which I ended up doing here first try, thankfully, to be able to open your paraglider just in time to interact with Monk Shoraha. Now we are kind of stuck here, and this is the biggest reason for the metal bow, because we are about to do a very long slide. By stepping up on the side of the rail here, we get our step-up animation and then can start sliding all the way across the lava lake to make our way to Gorai Tor, the shrine that usually is rewarded for completing the gut check rock challenge. And here at this point, my bow would eventually just burn down and I would fall into the lava. So using a metal bow here is advised. This was actually not intentional, but the timing here worked out perfectly. But I lost my bomb at this... I don't even know what these Octoroks are called. The Suck Octoroks. Don't quote me on this one. And from here another wind bomb will take me towards the shrine. Didn't get the perfect launch here, so I had to do another mid-air wind bomb, which you'll see quite a lot throughout the run. Lining up the bombs essentially mid-air to continue your flight. Now, again, this is going to be another shield clip, because there is a Goron in front of the shrine that would stop me from interacting with the terminal. And this is actually a very precise shield clip. You need to specifically set up your skew this way and then do a very, very unique setup here, which is going to allow you to clip in. And then by positioning behind the elevator with a bomb lifted up, you can actually clip into the elevator. Very unique and strange clip, but works out perfectly and is gonna skip having to do the gut check rock challenge, which would obviously lose a bunch of time as you have to collect 100 rupees, etc. And this is again exactly what I mentioned. Every time I do a shield clip to get through a wall, you'll see me at one point seemingly randomly try to bomb link. And this is essentially done to get rid of that ragdoll glitch, which would otherwise prevent me from launching. Now here is actually going to be a little bit of a cut, because I was trying really hard to get a quick slide started. This split was a little bit of a disaster. After getting a really nice clip into the shrine, I didn't get any good slides whatsoever, and this wind bomb felt kind of slow to me, so I decided to do something called an Alford mid-air. At least I attempted it, where you place both bombs in really quick succession. I think I failed it twice here. It's a very, very strange wind bomb. Everyone who's ever done it would know. Very unique inputs. I didn't do well with those in this run, so I decided to instead just land, perform another normal launch, taking me to Zuna Kai, a shrine that's technically just really out there, so I'll end up losing a lot of time here. Ideally, I could have just done a slide or a quick wind bomb here, but ended up not working well for me. This is a super easy shrine though. A blessing sitting on top of Skull Lake. Don't actually remember how I made it to the shrine casually. I think you can simply just glide over there though. Not sure if they usually intend you to climb up there. I don't think you have enough stamina for that. The paraglider does wonders here. Now again, and I'm really thankful that this setup exists. Normally there wouldn't be any ledge to step up here to start a slide. But we once again can use the elevator itself to get the slide started. Then I can get a bunch of speed by wiggling. And I will fly all the way to Tukalo, a place that has recently become very interesting. As in Tears of the Kingdom trailers and material, we've seen this maze seemingly fly up in the sky. So very interested to uncover what's behind this Zonai structure. Got a pretty nice movement here right into the opening where I need to land. And now this is where English saves time. This text right here is blue text. We get across in one text box. Basically every other language other than Russian, which loses time in Eventide Island later, has this text box up for more than one screen. So there's like 2 blue texts that show up, each of them losing 7 seconds. So by selecting English in all of the 3 mazes and the Typhlo Ruins later, we save 7 seconds every time. So English actually ends up saving like close to 30 seconds in this category. Very powerful. I do not get the Barbarian Armor here. Essentially opening these 3 pieces in the mazes would end up losing me around 9 seconds. Now I did cook a tech food earlier, which technically lost more time, but you'll see me grab something else here. Now this is not the super known fact, but this diamond circlet actually increases ancient damage by 20%. And since I'm exclusively going to be dealing damage with ancient arrows in the late game, this is actually a big damage increase, which I can stack on top of the attack food that I will consume when I get to the boss fights. And there's one more important fact. Normally, when you go to the boss fights in any percent, you do something called Windblight Skip, which we are going to have to do in this category as well, because all of the blights will be there. And Windblight Skip doesn't really work well with speed food. So if I just grabbed the armor, my speed buff would potentially still be active when I get to the boss fights, messing up the skip. So the attack food is the safer choice, and it allows me to stack it on top of the diamond circlet, which is why I'm not grabbing the barbarian armor. Now you could also see me pick up some wood there, which wasn't super fast because I don't really have good weapons to cut it down, but it's very needed for one of the shrines coming up soon because we need to manipulate the time of day cycle in order to make it there. So I need to make a campfire, which is why I picked up the piece of wood. Now here, I place down the bomb instead of exploding it. That's going to make it so that I don't have to wait for the cooldown. I slid over here to the Gerudo Canyon and will now perform some wind bombs, taking me to Kihayug. There's a pretty cool trick shot coming up here. I really liked this shrine casually, finding this mural, and then, I mean, it's not really a big puzzle, but figuring out that you have to shoot a shock arrow here is just very epic. And in my casual playthrough, the second I did this, Farosh started appearing over it. It's a very cool moment for me in my casual playthrough that I remember. And you can see here by aiming in the middle of the spark little icon on top of the pedestal, even with a bad bow, in this case the knight's bow doesn't have great range, makes it so that it lands perfectly in the center, activating the shrine. Yet again, you see multiple of these. An underground shrine, not worth doing our shrine elevator trick here. Would lose way too much time to set up. Shooting the shock arrow here is simply faster. Now speaking of casual players, it's probably going to be a little bit hurtful to realize that I just simply skipped the diamond waiting at the chest here, but I already have all of the money I need. So running through the shrine, again, simply saves time. Now from here, we are going to make our way to Kema Kosasa, another shrine in the Gerudo Canyon. And this shrine here was kind of a sleeper. It looks like it's in the middle of nowhere, kind of tucked away in the cliffside. But again, because we can use these elevators to set up slides, we can actually use its great height to our advantage. Kihayuk is the highest of the Gerudo Canyon shrines, which is going to make it so that we can now slide perfectly over to the other side of the canyon to enter Kema Kosasa, which is a major test of strength, a little bit lower, and you see here the height matches perfectly to get there super quick. One interesting fact about this major test of strength, and some others in the game, especially 2 in Hebra and the test of power, they technically have water on the ground, which would allow us to place a Cryonis block for wind bombs. But even though that can be nice and convenient, because we have to do this setup here, this specific launch across the Guardians so many times, it is simply more beneficial for us to always use the same setup. That way we don't confuse our muscle memory and just always have to do the same trick for each of them. And then again, you'll see this every single time I bomb Link after a clip to not deal with the ragdoll glitch. You can actually kind of tell that Link is glitched, because when he does get hit by this bomb, you kind of see him just like tilt in the middle of nowhere, like in the air, instead of flying around. So this is essentially the reason we bomb Link. This is awkward because we do want to do another slide here, but the structure on the side here is really weird. You'll see later that there's a reason that I always pick up the round bomb for these slides, which it accelerates faster when you slide through the air. But the round bomb is notorious for, well, being round. So it can actually easily roll away when you try to set up the slide, which can be cause of lots of frustration and time loss, and you will definitely see it 1 or 2 times throughout this run. Shodan 2 to me was one of the most underwhelming puzzles in the game, as there is literally a bunch of luminous ore right next to it, and the puzzle speaks of something like pick up the blue glowing stone. Like, that's literally what the sign in front of this pedestal says. So when I placed the ore, there was like, there is no way it can be this simple. Thankfully, the interior of the shrine, at least casually, is one of my very favorites. It's a 2 bombs shrine. And it's actually really fun to do. I picked up a flint there kind of unintentionally, but it actually ended up being beneficial for me later because it's a pretty quick way to make a campfire. Don't have to get the luminous ore and just make it into the shrine. Now, this shrine could actually technically be decently fast to enter with the elevator trick, but we need the shrine itself to rise out of the ground for what I'm about to do next. Now here, my wind bomb unfortunately failed. Thankfully, I knew of a backup strat for this, because you can also wind bomb from up here. Normally, you do a little bit of bullet time manipulation there to get just over the gate. Didn't make that work, so lost some time in the process, but nothing too major. And again, the next shrine is Sasakai. It's the shrine next to the Gerudo Tower, where you usually have to be exactly at like, I think it's like 2:15 or something, which I was actually pretty close here to 2:15, but if I just made it there, I would have still end up losing time having to wait and then also having to sit through the animation of the shrine rising from the ground. So here I do the elevator storage trick again, and the shrines that are still underground, even though their unload radius isn't global, like the ones that I already talked about, like the one in the Korok Forest, and later the one encased in ice, which is huge for this run, and even bigger, the Test of Wisdom. The Spring of Wisdom. These underground shrines have a 500-meter unload radius, which is just enough to make it to this section, take this chest with bomb arrows a little bit towards the Sasakai shrine, where I can then enter it by getting the text box on screen while simultaneously picking up bomb arrows, which I actually need for another shrine. So this is a very efficient split. This will take me into the Sasakai shrine, which would be next to the tower. Right now it's still underground, but I can still clear it by using this trick. And then again, it's a test of strength. Now, it's important to note that the reason I can do this glitch here with the normal text box is because I'm still within the 500-meter unload radius. These global shrines that you can access any shrine in the world with, the text box needs to be even faster or the glitch won't work, which is why I did that choo-choo trick earlier. I will also be doing it for other shrines later. Not only with choo-choos, but with another mechanic that we'll get to once we make it there. Now, I have a channel called LimQ Plus where I talk about the countdown until Tears of the Kingdom, and recently I tried to clear this shrine, the Dakota shrine, quickly. It's usually a very annoying shrine, similar to Shoraha, the one with the blue flames we talked about a bit ago, because of its very unique architecture. Thankfully, thanks to Ikurapan, a Japanese 100% runner, we have this setup here, where we do a pre-mature turn mid-wind bomb, which gives us just enough height to land next to this chest. This chest contains a radiant shield, which is known for being very slick, great for shield surfing. I will be picking this up because I need a bunch of shield durability, and can from there jump to the end of the shrine. Thankfully, the shrine is finally saved. Used to be one of the most frustrating to speedrun. And this branch here in particular, doing these shrines in the desert, is very punishing. Not only is this shrine hard, we just did one of those elevator tricks, which is, by the way, incredibly hard to perform. I'll get more time to talk about it later, because I won't always get it as quickly as I have been in the recent parts of the run. It requires like 20 or so really quick inputs. Then Dakota happens, which I just explained is frustrating, and then K-No happens, this shrine here. Technically it's simple, you need to do a wind bomb, but your inputs need to be almost instant. If you lose any amount of time here setting up this wind bomb, you will actually not clear the wall I just cleared, land in front of the door, and then have to grab a key, which loses like literally 30 seconds or so. So very important that your wind bomb here is flawless. The last part is easy though. We simply move the metal block into the right position to make the electric current happen. Finish up the shrine. Now if you look at my timer, next to Korsh Ohu, which is the next shrine at the 7 heroine statues, there's a piece of wood. And this is because this is where I'll start manipulating time of day to make it to a shrine in the future just in time. And that's gonna be the Suma Sama shrine on the very big mountain. You can not really see it, it's like on the left of me. You need to be there at exactly 4 PM. And if you look at the clock, it is 4 PM right now. So it's actually important that I will set the time to noon here to not waste any time waiting for the right time of day to happen when I get there. Korshahu is quite simple. It's a location that recently also has basically gained some significance, given that some of the promotional material for Tears of the Kingdom has showed this place again in a little bit of a different... not gonna get too much into it, even though it's official information, but I'm assuming some people here are even avoiding trailers and that sort of stuff. But this is definitely a location I'm interested in revisiting in Tears of the Kingdom. Granted that one of these statues literally has a tear as a symbol. What I need to do here is just get these orbs and place them in the right opening. The orb I'm going past here, that's still stuck in the sand, the red one is the one with the tear. Will actually be also the last one that I'm gonna be putting in the right place. But there's not much more to say here. Once again, it seems like it could barely be worth it to enter this shrine using the SCW, the elevator trick, to reach underground shrines, but it's just barely too slow. So solving this puzzle the normal way ends up just being worth it. This is the tier I talked about. There's literally a tier on this one. Interesting to see if there's any more secrets to uncover in Tears of the Kingdom. This shrine does a surprisingly little amount of quests. We won't have to do the quests here with the 8 heroine statue or any of the ice quests in Gerudo Town. Mostly because we have so many glitches and tricks at our disposal that all that matters in this run is getting to the shrines quickly and solving them quickly. With very little exceptions like this one, where we actually complete the puzzle. Then we get rewarded with another blessing shrine. It is actually quite interesting to note that running in a perfect line from the beginning to the end of these shrines ends up mattering quite a bit. There's close to 40 blessing shrines in this game, so if you have a little bit of flaws in your movement inside these shrines, you can lose up to a minute from simply running unideal lines. Now this is actually a more challenging spot to set up a slide, because you can see the round bomb, if I wasn't blocking it using Link's body here, would simply roll away. a lot of this run is based on knowing where to set up these slides in an ideal way to be able to use the round bomb. I will be using the square bomb for some of these slides later because the round bomb ended up rolling away, and you will be able to tell how much slower the acceleration ends up happening. Now, this is what I just mentioned. Normally, this shrine is only obtainable when completing the Ice House quest. But we can, again, use a shield clip to our advantage, which didn't work great here in my first attempt. Second attempt will make it work, though. And obviously, even though I probably lost like 10-15 seconds here failing the clip once, having to do the Ice House quest would be much, much longer. Literally like 6 to 8 minutes of running around. Actually more. Think about it. We would have to get the Gerudo armor to even start the Ice House portion of the quest, which would mean we would have to go to Karakara Bazaar, which would mean we would have to watch the Naboris cutscene. So this clip is a tremendous time save. It's a very simple strategy at this point, but it saves so much time. Now, you see Naboris is still around, and it will be around until the very end. Naboris blocks another quest in the Gerudo Desert, which is the shield surfing minigame. This is precisely one of the shrines that we are going to be entering with the underground, like access shrines underground trick, the elevator trick. And that one in particular saves like 20 minutes because it allows us to skip the entire Naboris quest simply by knowing how to enter these shrines that are still underground. So that was a huge discovery. The original discovery of entering shrines underground was made again by a collaborative effort, but mostly Legend of Link, who's been a huge glitch hunter for this game. The Infinity version of it that we'll be using for the Sandseal race was found during my challenge run. Now this is going to be our second Zonai maze that we are going to be entering, where once again we'll save 7 seconds simply from having the game set to English. Didn't enter it as smoothly as the last one by miscalculating my falling position here. And again you'll see one blue text box and we'll be off. And yet again, even though this would be the home of another barbarian piece, I think for Dila Mark it is the chest piece. We will be skipping it. Wait, no, I'm not sure. I know it's definitely the Hebrew one has the pants, and I'm pretty sure the Akala one is the headpiece, so I think this one is the chest piece, yeah. Now next on the list is Shrine 30 Suma Sama, and this is what I set my clock for. If you look at the time right now, it's 3 PM. I had some issues here setting up my wind bomb. Thankfully, I had a little bit of wiggle room. Again, I want to be reaching the next location at around 4, ideally exactly 4, which is the second the next shrine becomes available. But this basically makes it so that if I lose time during this section, it doesn't really matter. Because if I end up reaching the shrine too early, instead I will just end up standing there doing nothing. So making some mistakes during this section is actually not the end of the world. In fact, it doesn't even really lose time. The only time you would be losing is if you spend any amount of time in your menu for no reason. This movement here is very awkward. We have to climb all the way from the bottom of the maze up to the top of the mountain. But it just works out perfectly because we are going to be using the position of the mountain to just move on, going downwards again towards Central Hyrule. This is actually a very long branch. We call these branches. What this means is essentially constantly moving along from shrine to shrine without doing any warping. So as long as we're still going further and further, this is what is considered a branch, and ideally you want to perform the run in as little branches as possible, because warping, if it's done unoptimally, you will just lose time. Sometimes warping is faster, but if you can just move on to the next shrine, that's what you want to do. You could see ancient arrows coming in quite clutch here with this random enemy spawn. Could have potentially knocked the snowball away from me, but I made it here just in time to be able to hold it into the light, casting a cold shadow, activating Suma Sama. And this was the reason for not only picking up wood, but also making that campfire at the 7 Heroine statues. Yet again, another blessing shrine. So we'll just be running there, completing it, and then moving on. This was actually one of the last shrines I did casually. I had some issues here with that puzzle. I heard later on that you can also use a Cryonis block to cast that Cold Shadow, which made it easier for some. But these time-gated shrines casually usually stressed me out quite a bit. Now from here, and this is what I meant, we can just move on downwards again towards Central Hyrule. But first to Ishto So, the shrine at this like trash junkyard, essentially. It's a pretty quick one, another one that I rate quite highly casually due to its mechanics of the laser, despite being potentially a bit confusing. And as always, well, most of the times, a wind bomb is gonna allow us to clear it pretty seamlessly. Now from here, we are going to be using the height advantage to make our way into the shrine hidden away in Lake Hylia, Ya Naga. And this is also the reason that I needed to pick up these bomb barrels for, you'll see why essentially. But here, another great showcase of what makes these slides so powerful. You can get top speed relatively quickly and then make it in a direct line into that little cave. I almost want to call it a cave tucked away inside the lake. One other important thing that's worth noting is when you go from shrine to shrine, you want to try to land as close to the activation pedestal as you can. Otherwise you lose time randomly running around. But this is why we want bomb barrels, basically blowing up the ceiling. By standing on the stair and aiming at the opening, you can precisely throw your bomb into the foreseen area and ride the block up to the monk. And what makes this branch nice is that now we are in the middle of Lake Hylia. We are actually fairly close again to Central Hyrule. So from here, we can wind bomb out of the little alcove, I guess, to the bridge of Hylia, where if we were playing Tears of the Kingdom, and again I'm not gonna get into it, I myself haven't even actually seen any leaks, but even from trailers you might already know that there's a potentially interesting encounter here. Can't wait for that one. And then we'll be using the bridge itself, and here you can see a great showcase of the round bomb just rolling away from me, which allows me to, which doesn't allow me to pick it up, so I lost some time here. But from here we can do a slide, and then we are already basically back in Central Hyrule. So doing this movement here would have been faster than warping back to the Great Plateau. It may have not looked this way because I usually cut away the loads during this part, during this specific run showcase. But in a real run setting, if I warped to the Great Plateau here and then wind bombed from the tower to the shrine, it would have been slower than just moving on. This is the idea of the branches that I talked about, where you want to try to avoid warping as much as possible. Now, Bosch Kala was, for me, my first casual shrine. It's a pretty simple one. Having speed food here is pretty much our only kind of like improvement running around the shrine, because there's actually quite a bit of running here. The rest is just gliding. And now that we are back in Central Hyrule, there's actually a bunch of options again. So again, this is how routing in this game works. You want to always put yourself in a position where you have multiple options to move to another shrine quickly, without leaving any of them out. So you don't have like this arc-ward shrine at the end, almost getting stopped there by a random swarm of keys. Thankfully able to maneuver around them with the slide. And then you'll see we are already at the Riverside Stable, where the next shrine is waiting for us, Vargo Kata. This branch here is very fun. Very quick shrines in quick succession that are easy to clear. This one we intentionally aim our wind bomb against the wall at a slight angle, which will then allow us to open the paraglider, gliding to the end of the puzzle. Showing the versatility of wind bombs and what makes them so powerful. At this point in the run, I was a little bit nervous. This branch is very fun to do, but I was realizing, okay, I'm 4 minutes and 27 seconds ahead, which means if I keep playing at this pace, I will be able to complete the run in under 5 hours. But I knew another super hard trick was coming up soon. Was managing to get a really nice wind bomb here, barely clearing those flowers. Too bad. I wish I would have had another final encounter with Magda, otherwise known as Flower Blight Ganon, before I move on to the next Zelda game. Maybe she will be back and even more vicious. Here, a turn wind bomb, which is again altering your initial angle by turning Link, gets me a very nice angle towards the end of the Healer Rao Shrine. I lost some time here compared to my personal best, as it's technically possible to also open your paraglider, but that's alright. Now here I perform another wind bomb. Just kidding, because the game ended up lagging, perfectly stopping me onto the flowers. So after all, we did get one more encounter with Flower Blight Ganon. It would have been honestly sad if it didn't happen. I did have to give her a little push there at the end, being upset about my time loss. But what would be a run without Flower Blight Ganon? From here we move on to the Kaya Wan Shrine. We do not ride the deer. We will be doing that later, as it's actually required for one of the shrines. But yeah, doing a wind bomb here is going to be the faster option. Now, Kaya Wan is another infamous shrine for its, I wouldn't even say difficulty, it's just known to be very annoying. The architecture inside the shrine basically makes it so that wind bombing is almost impossible. Something will always be in your way. So what we do instead is we place a Cryonis block and then wind bomb to a pretty weird direction. You'll see it here. There's all of this like this weird ceiling stuff on top of Link, so you can't just wind bomb to the end. So instead we wind bomb here. I end up falling down here, but thankfully there's a trick called like jump reset. It's essentially the same that you do with the fall damage cancel, where you get another jump, so I can climb back up and then do a slide from here. This doesn't look very fast. If you think about it, you just have to ride a boat to the end. But it is actually still faster to slide to the end here by a couple seconds, and taking that boat ride can be super frustrating because these guardians can simply kill you. Now, granted, technically I have a bunch of ancient arrows here, so maybe the boat ride would be about the same speed. But if I didn't fall down, they're having to do a jump reset, the slide would have probably saved me around 5 seconds. I think this is another good showcase of the round bomb. Perfect. You see the physics of the game working great here. It looks like to me, honestly, that the round bomb will roll at random, seemingly random directions sometimes, making the setups for the slides here a little annoying at times. Thankfully, I ended up being able to start the slide. I'm usually very careful in this area, as it's easy to bump into trees or the fence, which would stop the slide if you do it at an like a bad angle. But once I'm clear of the stable, I can build up all the speed I need to make it to the Dakatas Shrine. And this shrine is, I like to call this the Tears of the Kingdom Dream Shrine, because we are going to be going underwater here. At this point, as I haven't seen the leaks, I don't know if you can go underwater in Tears of the Kingdom, but I do know that by intentionally making Link ragdoll here, by unequipping his shield, you can briefly dive underwater, making it to the treasure room without solving the puzzle. Perfectly here, there's a step out of the water that allows us to wind bomb to the end of the shrine. This is one of my favorite shrine speedrunning strats in the entire game. Not sure if we'll be able to go underwater, but hey, if you know how to speedrun, you can do so at least for like 2 seconds in Breath of the Wild speedruns. Now we are approaching the difficult strat I previously teased at the Lagna Roki Shrine. Slowly but surely. But first of all, I will be entering Kakariko, where I will briefly visit the town. Now, in normal playthroughs, not only wouldn't you be wind bombing, but you would also interact with Impa here to not only get directions to how to obtain the camera, which would normally be needed for all the shrines. We don't need it anymore thanks to the elevator trick. And also to spawn the dragons. We still need a Farosh scale, but we don't, because we are also going to be using the elevator trick to enter the Spring of Courage later, so we actually never need a dragon to spawn, making it so that a visit to Impa will not happen in this run. Also, I'm using some more of my rupees to buy a bunch of fire arrows, which will be needed for some tricks later on, and also melting ice. Pretty important actually for melting ice specifically, so going down here to purchase them is very, very needed. The rest of my rupees will be spent on ice arrows, which will be mostly used for the elevator trick later. with a twist that I've already kind of teased. Now, Talo Naik is a little bit different. It is technically a test of strength, but it doesn't have the gate in front, so we can't do our normal wind bomb setup. We actually need to do a super specific wind bomb here because the cutscene trigger for the tutorial guardian also works slightly differently than the rest of the test of strengths. I'm very glad that I managed to do it correctly here. So thankfully Talo Naik not giving me big issues, and I'm able to clear the shrine smoothly. Now, Lagnaroki is coming up. And in my run here, I messed this trick up once, which is why you are going to be seeing a cut here again. This is this is probably the hardest SCW in the run. So what you do is you perform elevator storage, which is once again done by doing all of these inputs, like 17 inputs or 20 inputs immediately. So you basically do a fall damage cancel, trigger the elevator, jump away again, and then for this one I made sure to not bomb blink away from the elevator but jump on it, which made it so that I was able to make it to this tree. Now doing this wind bomb, and you see that I sped up the footage here, we do something called pause buffering. The Lagnaroki shrine is barely out of range from the unload radius from the Talo Naik shrine where I started this trick. So I was actually using a metronome here to frame perfectly pause buffer for like a straight up minute. If you mess up this pause buffer once, the shrine that I started on would be unloaded and I wouldn't be able to enter the Lagnaroki shrine. Which is once again, and you'll see where I leave here, this is the shrine I just was in. The shrine that you usually have to complete multiple quests for. The Fairy Fountain Photography quest. The Cuckoo quest. You have to do so much gameplay to normally be entered this shrine. So by wind bombing over there, pause buffering, which takes you like 90 seconds if done ideally, you save minutes and minutes of time. It's just very difficult to do. I sped up the footage here because I didn't want to annoy you with the metronome sound for 90 seconds. But just trust me, it's probably the hardest trick in the game. So even though it took me 2 tries, it was very, not the game, but in the run. Maybe buffered shrine coordinate warps, buffered elevator tricks are like the hardest trick to do, at least in normal speedruns. So I was very glad to be done. I did end up losing 90 seconds because it took me 2 tries. And in my previous run, I got it first try. So that's a bit annoying, but it's fine. Here, we get our intended deer ride out of the way to activate the Metzalo shrine. Again, it's a shrine that's underground, but there is no shrine nearby with either an infinite unload radius, which is only a few, like, again, the Dragon Springs, the Korok Forest shrines, the ones that are not the one at the Master Sword, but the other 3, and the Ice Shrine that we will be getting later. Those ones have infinite unload radiuses because of their unique conditions. The other ones in the area would have been too far away, or I would have had to frame perfectly pause buffer for like 6 minutes in order to slowly get here. So it's faster to ride the deer. Ancient Trifecta is, once again, big surprise, a simple wind bomb to clear it. But at least we got a little bit of a deer ride in. Now from here, we actually have a pretty good position to make it into Zora's domain. Skipping the entire, like, thunderstorm section where you would usually be viciously attacked by a bunch of electric keys. I had some issues with the BLSS here, which is why you could see a quick cut. Again, making this run more seamless to commentate. You'll see me squeeze through this bridge here. We just have the perfect height to make it under here, and then we are basically already in Zora's domain. I ended up unfortunately bumping into the city here, losing some of my initial speed, but it's fine. My goal here is to grab the ceremonial trident, which is underwater next to this bridge here. I will be using that to enter the Daga Keeg shrine, which is not the next one, but the one afterwards. Now, you can also do another one of those buffered elevator tricks here that I just did in Kakariko, but it saves like 30 seconds. The success rate is pretty low, and you most of the time won't even see that trick in the world record. It actually isn't in the world record right now, as grabbing this trident isn't super slow and it's just safer. From down here, we can wind bomb again to make it into the domain. And the Divine Beast cutscene for this area of the game is fortunately tied to talking to King Dorephan. So we can avoid that too and just run through the domain without any issues. Nisioma is the shrine inside the domain. It's a simple wind bomb. Jump onto the elevator, wind bomb to the right. Can be a little bit scary here because sometimes you're not able to open your paraglider before you fall past this big fence. Thankfully, I was able to make it work quite easily here. Another reason we get into Zora's domain at this time, earlier on in our route, is because they sell ice arrows conveniently without having to open a bunch of chests, especially because we get to grab 20 ice arrows here pretty quick. If you wanted to get 20 ice arrows, otherwise you would have to open at least 2 chests, but probably more, and you would have to go out of your way for them. So this is just a pretty efficient way of collecting them, which again will be needed for our elevator trick, especially for the activation of it. A perfect wind bomb from the domain leaves us with enough height to do a plunge attack onto this pedestal. I tell this story multiple times, but when I watch people play this game casually, a lot of times I see people actually going up the waterfall trying to nail the plunge attack from the top of it. And I laugh because that's what I did. I thought you needed to be like cool, like badass looking, nail that plunge attack from the very top. All you need to do is to plunge attack at all. You can technically do it from a Cryonis block. So yeah, despite not looking as cool, we save some time here. I will then immediately get rid of the ceremonial trident as it doesn't really contribute anything to us in terms of damage for the boss fights later. So we throw that one away to have cleaner menuing. So some people at this point might ask, wait, why do you even do the boss fights? Isn't this all shrines? Like, why do you even beat the game? Well, I personally have always disagreed with that myself, but the way the rule set currently works is that if you do any speedrun in the game, you have to end it by beating the game. At least on the main leaderboard, the way you can think of these speedruns is like, beat Breath of the Wild while doing this. Which in this case, beat Breath of the Wild while also beating all of the shrines. It makes it so that I do some unique routing choices like duplicating these ancient arrows, which otherwise wouldn't be needed, because we wouldn't have to fight the bosses. The run would also be a little bit faster. But obviously we abide by the rules here, because I wanted to get this run on the leaderboard as kind of like my last mark on it, as I've been contributing to the routing and strat finding for this run ever since 2019. I wanted to at least break the last hour barrier that at this point was broken. Maybe one day we'll push it under 4 hours, but not for a long time, as I personally, and I know a lot of other runners, will have their eyes on the sequel. I perform another slide here to make it to So Kofi, another minor test of strength, which again is only slightly faster to be cleared using the wind bomb, especially with my inventory. And you may have actually missed it, I kept the Forest Dweller bow from Korok Forest, which is a triple shot bow. Using that in combination with ancient arrows would actually destroy these guardians quite quick. But it's mostly the fact that not only do you skip the cutscene of them spawning, but you also travel to the other side of the shrine efficiently. So even if I fought these guys, I would have to sit through the cutscene, and I could skip the clip, but you can see how fast that clip really is, right? So you can still tell how skipping even these fights is a little bit quicker. We'll use another elevator slide here to make it to Sheerata, a shrine sitting in the middle of the wetlands on a hill surrounded by thorns. Thankfully, the So Kofi shrine has just enough height for us to avoid these thorns entirely. We can simply make it to the next shrine easily. I really like the wind bomb strat inside Sheerata. You do a very unique turn wind bomb that sends you in a very nice angle straight to where you need to go. So we can take a look at it here. Just run forward, there's a slope, you jump down, and I actually, okay, never mind, I have that up. I failed it first try here, but you aim in this corner, and then that angle here just perfectly sends you to this area of the shrine where you can just interact with the monk. After this shrine, we will run into a fan favorite, the Miro Shah's Shrine. And when I say fan favorite, I mean people hate this one. It's our little golf mini game. And maybe you've watched my compilation of ranking all of the shrines in the game, where I already gave away the strat I'm about to do, which would help a bunch of casual players. But there's a unique approach to this shrine that makes it so that you no longer have to suffer through missing your golf shots. And it's actually very simple. Kind of sits tucked away here at the woodland stable. We've already visited quite a few stables. Of course, we won't actually need to interact with any of the people there. But after entering, the elevator takes us to part 1 of the golf puzzle. Now, arguably part 2 is what frustrated even more people, but the trick here is simply use a two-hand weapon and hit this orb exactly 5 times. If you do so, it will always have the exact amount of speed to get a perfectly clean shot, and you never have to retry this. Try this out yourself. Take a two-hand weapon, doesn't have to be the hammer. Hit it 5 times, try to keep the arrow even by positioning Link right in the middle of the object, and you'll get that shot first try. Now, we have almost made it to the end of this very big branch, taking us through the Gerudo Canyon, the desert, back into central Hyrule, almost back to Hyrule Castle, where we kind of started. Almost started, we went here quite early. But at the Nami-Chaos Shrine is where this will come to an end for multiple reasons. This shrine is kind of encased in a huge tree stump, so it's a little bit awkward to leave the location. But the other reason is that we are going to work on getting the ice shrine out of its ice now. So by doing this long branch at the start, we were able to collect things like ice arrows and fire arrows that I will be needing for the rest of the run. Fire arrows is what I need to get the ice shrine out of its ice. And that's going to be important because it's going to be a huge source of our elevator trick. Another modest test of strength here is cleared by performing a wind bomb. And the clip. And as always, you'll see Link is ending this with getting bombed. He's probably going to be glad that in Tears of the Kingdom I won't be able to bully him this much. Now, you'll see here why warping is quite slow. It's not actually the load, it's this animation. Because you'll see, I'm cutting out the load here. Usually there's a load between. But you still have to sit through these long animations of Link, like dissolving and appearing again. So without the load, warping looks quite fast, but everything together, just wind bombing straight to the next location, getting closer to the shrine you need to go to, ends up being faster often. I ended up warping back to Kiha-Yok, the shrine with the big lightning icon on top of it. Like I said, it actually has a very nice height, so not only could I get to one side of Gerudo Canyon, I can also perfectly go to the other side of it, where Kataka is waiting for us. Now this is the infamous shrine encased in ice, which has these unique conditions because its unload radius is kind of tied to the ice block itself. I think from a programming reason, the reason this was done is because they didn't want this ice block to unload if you only leave for 500 meters. Imagine you go to the shrine casually, you unfreeze it, but you realize you miss one fire arrow, and you step away 500 meters to collect the fire arrow. If then the ice block would revert back to the original design, you would be very frustrated, which is probably why they increased the unload radius for the shrine. Now, Kataka itself has one of my favorite speedrunning strats. First of all, you throw a bomb to basically get this ice block in your direction. If you get too close to this ice block, a cutscene of the monk plays that will explain you the mechanics of what you are supposed to do in the shrine. Then you place the ice block specifically on this ledge, hit it 3 times with a hammer, shoot an arrow against it, make it back up top, and then backflip off the catapulting ice block. This will make it so that the cutscene will trigger because the ice block has reached the monk's vicinity and allows you to open the paraglider, collecting your blessing. Now we are not gonna mess around and we will immediately use this huge unload radius of the shrine to our advantage. Again, I will be trying to store the elevator here and you'll see this, I basically jump to the left and do a fall damage cancel, which after the fall damage cancel I need to immediately press A and jump again, and then jump away and place a bomb and also blow it up. Like, I'm not kidding you. You have to do like close to 20 inputs here to even store the elevator. From here, I wind bomb away from the shrine to set up another slide. And if you read the timer here, the next shrine says Mija Rocky. That is the Blood Moon Shrine. And the reason that this elevator trick was the biggest discovery we have ever made for this run. In any other case, without this trick, we would never be able to beat this category in under 6 hours. That's because we would have to literally sit here and wait for the Blood Moon to happen. By being able to do this trick, we can store the elevator, read this book, which is going to give us a quick text box, and we will load into the Blood Moon Shrine. So again, think about it. Normally, and if you don't know the mechanics of a Blood Moon will only happen around 2 hours and 40 minutes after activating the first cutscene of the game. And that's in-game time, which means loads don't count, warping doesn't count, pressing the D-pad to switch your runes doesn't count. So you would be restricted forever to do this run fast because of the nature of this shrine. But thankfully, we found the elevator trick, which removed all restrictions and allows us to go as fast as we possibly can. From here, we are going to be doing something seemingly pretty weird, but first of all, we need to set up another slide. This slide is going to take us towards the Toyasa Shrine, which is another Zonai area in the game. And normally you are supposed to place a bunch of orbs into the right location. Again, English does this with one leg. Actually, no, I think Toyasa is actually the same than other languages. The Tide of the Ruins later will save some text boxes, or like one text box. But this, I think, is always the same amount of text boxes. But we land here. Get this cutscene out of the way. You who have reached this land of thunder, I present you with a trial. This cutscene we need to watch. It's talking about spirits here, which I think is interesting in the context of Zonai. We'll get into this more when Tears of the Kingdom comes out. Something that I made theories about on my second channel. And then the round bomb is being the round bomb, but then we leave again, which is weird. This will come in clutch later. We needed to remove this cutscene to be able to enter the shrine with our elevator trick. If we had stored the elevator and made our way here immediately, that cutscene of the introduction of the shrine would have actually unloaded the elevator and we wouldn't have been able to enter with the trick. So important that we make a little stop here, get the cutscene out of the way, which is why on my timer that shrine icon here is red, so that I don't forget to do this. And then make it to Sheloya. Now, this shrine is as simple as it can be. Jump on the peg, wind bomb, done. The great thing about fairies is it doesn't matter if you end up falling all the way down here and quote-unquote die, because the fairies will always have your back. Now, the entire way the route is constructed is that technically it doesn't sometimes matter in what order we do shrines in, especially if we end these branches with a warp. But the reason we are now on our way towards the Rito area is because that one of the shrines in the Rito area is one that's usually locked behind a divine beast. It's the Wu Lota Shrine, and normally you have to gather all of these birds around its location and then play a song for them, which will rise the shrine out of the ground. Now, this is normally not doable before you beat the Divine Beast, but again, we are going to be using the elevator trick to our advantage. Now, in order to activate that elevator storage for this shrine, we are going to be using, because there's no quick items in our vicinity, we are going to be using the Amiibo rune. But we are not actually spawning anything with it yet. We are just opening the rune. The first time you open the Amiibo rune, you get a text box, which will allow us to play the shrine animation. and that's only really useful for us in that location. And since that box only pops up once, and we actually need the Amiibo rune later, we want to kind of prioritize this area of the run. You didn't really miss much here as I explained this, as we did another major test of strength skip with the usual mechanics. I had some issues making it down to the Ka Okeo shrine from here. This is again a kind of like seemingly not super laggy area, but you can easily run into issues here by making the game lag a little bit too much. Again, I was feeling pretty good at this point. You could see I was 6 minutes ahead, so I tried to go for another one of those risky Alford wind bombs, and you could actually see the bomb collided with Link's shield there, but didn't quite actually hit him, so I didn't get the angle I wanted. Had to land due to stamina reasons. And from here, things started going really poorly. I didn't see that my square bomb was still out there, which made it so that my wind bomb failed, catapulted Link down. I thought, oh no, do I have to load back up? But thankfully, I was barely able to clutch this out with a decently good mid-air wind bomb here to make it to the shrine. Not my favorite split of the run, but I'm glad that I was able to save it decently. Ka Okeo for a long time has given runners a headache because it's again pretty unique architecture of the shrine. But thankfully, recently we found a solid strat, which basically consists of running up this ramp, aiming into the corner of the shrine, and then delaying your timing a little bit. You could see me wait here a little bit. This gives me enough height to hit the wall here, then open my paraglider to just glide to the other side of the shrine. Usually this is a ginormous puzzle where you are tasked to ride around the shrine on a floating raft. Very frustrating to do as well. So I'm glad that this one is skipped quite quickly. Next up is one of the most strange warps, especially because I had already explained that warping is usually a strategy that I and runners want to avoid. But you just end up being inside of this cave here with nowhere really else to go. And you also need height making it to Rito Village from here. So warping back up to where we just came from here is actually the most efficient strat. We do lose around 26 seconds from warping, but then we are in an advantageous location. This section of the run was actually going a little bit poorly. Another section that I wasn't happy with. You'll see another cut here as I was trying to set up the slide, but ran into issues here for quite a bit until the slide actually ended up working. So you could see a cut here. The slide did eventually work, and I made my way towards Rito Village. Now, we do have to land in the vicinity of the village here, as the shrine is too close to it. Which means we are gonna get a Divine Beast cutscene here. Now, there's actually a downside. By landing next to the shrine and having the Divine Beast cutscene play, which you don't see it play here immediately, but I actually waited for it here to set up a campfire for the Burrida Narg shrine. Because if I had entered the shrine, I would have gotten this cutscene 100% after leaving it. It's unavoidable. And not only is the cutscene unavoidable, but because we didn't talk to Impa, you get a unique, and this maybe some people of you have never heard, you get a unique introduction dialogue from Zelda, who's gonna explain you what a Divine Beast is. This is because we haven't talked to Impa to set up the story.
You must find a way inside in order to free it from Ganon's malice. I believe in you, Link.
You could see I dropped the Fire Choo-Choo Jelly and a wood piece from earlier. This is gonna allow me to set the time to noon, as the Burrida Narg shrine I teased in the intro needs to be activated at a little bit past noon. This is when the sun shines through the Rito monument, casting a heart onto the pedestal. This makes the timing for this next shrine a little bit precise, because we don't want it to be too much past noon. So I go for a safe strat here. Instead of doing a wind bomb in this shrine that has a very low ceiling, which can easily fail, I choose to play it safe and perform a slide. I actually had one issue here to set it up. Took me like 2 attempts to do so, but I just didn't want to fail a wind bomb and then having to run back. This would have been the worst case, because then you can actually miss the timing for the Burrida Narg shrine, which was potentially my favorite split of the run, and you'll see why. It actually ended up going way too perfect. I run to the left, go on top of the fence, and set up my wind bomb towards the pedestal. And you can see the shrine is about to activate here. I think it's at 12:35. I start falling, it hits 12:35. I switch to fire arrows and shoot the pedestal. And then my landing spot here couldn't have been more perfect. And you'll see why after this cutscene plays. I was literally exactly next to the pedestal, being able to simply press A and enter the shrine. The cannon shrine, a very fun shrine to do casually. We will instead turn Link into a cannonball as usual and activate the shrine. Now, the reason it's so important that we do this shrine properly, at least get it out of the ground, is, and I explained this earlier, we have the infinite shrine unload radius shrines, and we have these shrines, the ones that are underground and have to be met, the condition has to be met through a quest. These ones have a 500 meter unload radius, similar to the luminous ores shrine that we did earlier, and we are going to be using that to our advantage. We set up the storage by doing all of the inputs, make sure to not look back to unintentionally re-enter the shrine. And then I remember, I think this wind bomb here failed on our first attempt, but this at least gives me enough time to explain what I was about to explain. I could actually just see the square bomb in the back, so I might have failed it again. Yep, I could see it in my run there. It was there. That's really frustrating. The third time is the charm. But yeah, essentially what this allows us to do is we can get into the radius of the Volota Shrine, which would usually be locked behind the entire Vam Meadow quest line, and enter it. And now again, you'll see I have to land on the bottom side of this big cliff, which makes it so that there's no fast text boxes available to me, but I have the amiibo rune. So by activating the amiibo rune, I get the use amiibo text box, which will then trigger the elevator and will allow me to enter the Volota Shrine. Again, you can see the camera was kind of fading back towards the shrine I started from, because it remembered this elevator, but internally what happens to the game? The game basically asks, what shrine is Link closest to? Which shrine should I load? And since I'm closest to the Volota Shrine, that's the shrine that's being entered, which makes this trick so powerful, such a huge time save. Volota is a little bit scary, as we have to do a mid-air wind bomb here. I open up the door and set up my mid-air wind bomb because I have to basically plunge perfectly into the cave, which I managed to do. Pretty scary shrine. I'm even able to open my glider, which wouldn't have mattered in the sense of losing health, but it's still faster because you don't have to sit through the ragdoll animation. Now this part of the run was weird, because a lot of things were going poorly, but a lot of things were going great. My wind bomb here was nice, my wind bomb and landing spot for the Barida Narg Shrine was great, but this next thread was probably another one of my favorites in the run. Shah Vavo has a very unique wind bomb that only works if you play perfectly. I'm not even going to commentate it, I'm instead just going to show you it. Perfect height to skip the entire Shah Vavo puzzle, which is usually based around these updrafts and managing your height carefully, so very, very nice to be able to skip it. I have fond memories of the shrine casually, as I couldn't figure out how to get to that last updraft until it finally clicked and I saw its hidden position. Now, Mankara is my favorite shrine in the game. I really like its kind of like hidden location, and I love this wind bomb again. I had some pretty nice movement here from shrine to shrine, perfectly dodging that rock and then making it just into the opening here. I really loved finding this casually. This hidden cave gives you a lot of like dungeon vibes. You have to cross the cold waters. And then you find the shrine tucked away in the cave. And then the shrine itself casually is great. You have to deal with guardians, there's these trap puzzles, there's even a little bit of lava inside them. Obviously, I even like it in the speedrun because this wind bomb here just feels so nice. You like cross, you can see the entire huge shrine and you perfectly land next to the monk. It's a very satisfying one. Very fun to do. Now from here we enter Hebra, and Hebra is quite fun if it wasn't for this next split. We can't really warp away from here as we don't have a position anywhere on the map that would be really high enough for us to reach the next shrine in Hebra, other than maybe Death Mountain, which would just be too far away. Sliding from Death Mountain over here would not be worth it, would not grant warping all the way to the mountain. So instead we have to not only awkwardly leave this cave, but then do a bunch of wind bombs to reach Mozzo's Shannon, a major test of strength tucked inside a cave. Casually, you are supposed to find this shrine by finding a white birdie. This is a shrine quest that you obtain in Rito Village. Of course, in speedruns you already know where to go, but doesn't change the fact that getting there is incredibly annoying. First, you perform these 2 wind bombs, then you have to perform another one to the cliffside, and then a double chain using mid-air wind bombs. It's not a fun time. We're pretty close here at this point. I needed to nail this next mid-air, but unfortunately I did not. So I had to do a little bit of a backup strat. I delayed my timing here too much, which made it so that the wind bomb itself worked, but it gave me nearly no height. So I had to reset it up. Use this just to get enough height, then glide over to the opening. The amount of wind bombs in this run is staggering. You have to do probably close to 500 each run. Actually, it's probably closer to 1,000, as most splits at least have 2 wind bombs. One to get to the shrine, and a second one to clear the shrine. But then we have splits like this, where there's 5 wind bombs to get to the shrine. So I would actually guess that you do around 1,000 wind bombs every single Old Shrines run. Given the fact that I have done around 100 with changing routes and stuff, that means I've done 100,000 wind bombs at least. Probably not quite at 1,000,000, but probably closer to 1,000,000 than 100,000, honestly. Because I've obviously done 100% runs in so much casual playthrough. I wouldn't be surprised if I was fairly close to 1,000,000 wind bombs at this point. And I still fail them all the time. That's mainly though because when you're trying to go fast and there's conditions like wind, it's inevitable. You'll see failed wind bombs in every speedrun in the world. And the most important thing is that if it happens, you just recover quickly. Of course, ideally, you'd hit every wind bomb first try, but what makes a consistent run is that you do the wind bombs fast and you don't get annoyed when you fail. You just like immediately recover, go for a backup. Now there's a bunch of wind bombs here, another split right, Chardonnay. Takes me 4 wind bombs to even reach the shrine and then another to clear it, so 5 wind bombs for a single shrine. Probably sitting between 500 and 1,000 wind bombs over the course of the run. Red giveaway is a fun shrine to do casually, as you have multiple options to clear it, but no big surprise. And at this point, as we are getting close to the 60 shrine mark, people will probably get a little bit bored. And I can understand that because doing the wind bombs itself for the shrines can get a little bit boring, you know, it's basically always the same. But what makes this run so fun for me is the different approaches to get from shrine to shrine. The wind bombs are still fun to do. I actually ended up using the square bomb here unintentionally, which you'll see is going to take me a little bit longer to get to quick speeds as I'm on my way to the Hiamiyu shrine, a shrine at the very edge of Hebra. And we get a very, very rare sight here of a clear Hebra at dawn. And how pretty does it look? I wish it would be less stormy in Hebra in Tears of the Kingdom. But no, instead of having less fog, it looks like we're getting a giant perpetual snowstorm over Hebra instead this time. Honestly, at this point, I'm not surprised. But Hebra does look beautiful when it is cleared. So maybe when you get rid of that storm in Tears of the Kingdom, if that's a possibility, you get to explore clear Hebra a little bit more, which I would be looking forward to quite a bit. Hiamiyu is another major test of strength, and Hebra in general is known to have a few of them. I've already cleared one. I will clear this, and then the last one, Goma Asag, I will clear at around Shrine 80, I think, to get rid of all of those tests of strength here in the Hebra region. You'll see yet again another wind bomb to clear the shrine itself, but after this one we'll actually get a very unique approach to the next shrine, to Cuomo, which is at the Great Hebra Skeleton. I will then leave the Hebra area, even though I'm already here, because I have to warp either way, and I instead warp to an area of the game that is considered the most difficult part of the run, because it features basically all of our remaining shrine coordinate warps, these elevator tricks that will be used to skip huge quests. We'll get into each and every single one of them once we get there, but let's talk about Cuomo first. Now, usually the Great Hebra Skeleton is accessed from the other side of the mountain, and the shrine sensor in my casual playthrough tripped me up quite a bit here. But by landing on this side of the rock, we can get a skew and then shield clip into the mountain. Something pretty funny happened here. After getting the clip on, not my first try, it seems, I actually had to reset up the skew. And I think this is actually the reason that what is about to happen happened. I spent a little bit too much time here, which made the game able to load in more than usual. And you see a pretty funny occurrence happen here when I clip. This Lizalfos apparently also clipped out of bounds with me. You could actually see it shooting me here. I was just looking at it being like, wait, what? It was about to take another shot at me. But I wind bomb away. And you can see I've actually reached the cave where the Great Hebra Skeleton is, but I am still out of bounds. Thankfully, there is a perfect hole in the ceiling for us here to just squeeze through, fall back in bounds, and reach the Cuomo Shrine without going around the mountain, without doing the snowball puzzle and opening the door. So a very efficient routing choice. Now this chest actually contains a Royal Claymore, which I do need for the end of the run. There is another chest with a Royal Claymore though, closer towards the end of the run. So to not mess around with my menuing too much for now, I decide to pick that one up as late as possible. And now from here, I warp back to the shrine that we rid the deer on earlier. You actually got a quick glimpse at the map here for a second, and you could see how populated it already is. We've already crossed through quite a bit of the Hylian area here, of the Hyrule area here. That's the better term. But we are only halfway through the run. Now, I will mention that the first half of this run is quite a bit longer than the second half of this run. Basically, the way this run is working, I already talked about, there's the Great Plateau phase, the preparation phase, and then it really starts going. But because the preparation phase and Great Plateau phase happen in the first half is tremendously slowed down. Now, from this point on, we get to the hardest part of the run, where we do all of our big elevator tricks to skip a bunch of quests, and once that part is done, we are off to the really speedy part of the run, where it's just shrine to shrine, super quick movements, really fast shrines, and then off to Ganon we go. But at this point of the run, I was a bit scared. I was 8 minutes ahead, and I knew that sub 5 is in the back if I don't make really big mistakes, but unfortunately, those tricks really make or break the run, which is exactly the reason which is exactly why I essentially decided to route this part of the run in as early as possible. I can do it right at the start, and I actually fell down here, quickly missing the monk, but I wanted to do it as early as possible to get it out of the way, which still makes it so that it's at the middle of the run, but it's unfortunate. I am actually able to show off a pretty cool trick here, where I raise an ice block, shield jump up, unequip my shield, open the glider and blow up Link to make it up here as some sort of a backup. Now, as I'm recording this video, a marching band is currently going past my window, and since I'm recording this in basically one big take as I watch the run myself, I hope the marching band won't annoy you too much. I hope it's not really audible on the recording. It looks like my microphone is not picking it up, but maybe it's picking it up when I'm talking. Now, thankfully, because I made it noon earlier in Rito Village, going here makes it so that I get here at nighttime, which is perfect for the next shrine. Okay, I can definitely hear the marching band now. I hope they will leave the vicinity shortly. Not sure what is going on today. It's a Sunday, which usually is quite quiet in Germany. But yeah, this statue, interestingly enough, here in Kamu Rock, loads in first. So you actually always know what statue to aim on, I guess because it has different properties. Makes activating the shrine quite simple. And I think at this point, this is our last day, like time of day dependent shrine. So at this point, time of day doesn't really matter anymore, which is quite nice. Just needed to make sure to make it here at nighttime, which I was able to do. Camo Rock was one of the first wind bomb shrines that were found. We actually changed our strategy at this point, where we just wind bomb straight against the ceiling. That way we land on the big rotating structure and can jump to the monk from here. Now from here, we will do some interesting wind bombs to make our way to Hateno. Hateno is quite far away and surprisingly higher than you think. It's kind of like on the top of that hill. But by doing a wind bomb from here at the cliffside, we can land next to a rare ore that we can use as a stepping stone to slide all the way to Hateno. Yeah, the marching band is literally marching right next to my window. So the timing couldn't have been any better. Not sure why they are marching. And maybe when you listen to this video, maybe in the background, you don't even hear the marching band and you are just extremely confused what I'm talking about. But it is happening, and you could see a case of an unloaded shrine here. By going to Hateno so quickly with a really nice slide, I was able to actually enter the shrine without opening the door, as it was still in this low pulley state. I was able to get a nice wind bomb here as well, and will now make my way slowly but surely to the Spring of Wisdom, which is the most important shrine in the entire game, as it also has an infinite unload radius. Just like the shrine encased in ice. That's because the shrine is technically invisible behind the wall where Nadra is until you put the scale in. So again, a certain specific condition has to be met, which makes, for some reason, the elevator unload radius infinite, which allows us to enter every single shrine on the map. And the reason we choose specifically the Spring of Wisdom is because it's just very high up. It has a nice stepping stone right in front of the door, so we can go from the Spring of Wisdom to all sorts of locations around the map, enter those underground shrines early, which skips a bunch of side quests. Like, you'll see, once you see them, you think of so many. First of all, Eventide Island. We'll be able to skip the actual Eventide Island challenge. Second of all, Shokar Tatone, which is a shrine that we usually need to take 3 Guardian pictures for. Kaya, where we need to photograph the fragmented monument. Skipping those 2 shrines allows us to skip the entire camera rune. Like, everything adds up, making this run so incredibly fast. There was not much to say about Tano Ore here. It's a shrine kind of like tucked away. The challenge for this is really finding it. So once we wind bomb there, we are able to just collect the blessing. Now we are making it up to the Spring of Wisdom. And it's very high from here. So this is again a split that has us do between 3 and 5 wind bombs. Well, it's at least 4. Wait, is it? That's 2 already? 3... or 5. I think it's 5 actually. 5 is what is planned for. Also, one big factor that I haven't even talked about is the fact that I am able to complete this run without any gear. I never need to get cold resistance food or gear and can always run on the level 3 speed, because it doesn't matter that we are taking cold or heat damage. Thankfully, we have all of these fairies. That's a huge time save that the fairies... You don't even think about at first with the fairies. Now, Nadra is a sad story. We love Nadra. We love the music, and thankfully we get to listen to this music quite a bit in the speedrun. But saving her takes a bunch of time. And the entire reason I went to Hyrule Castle so early is to collect that scale, which I feel like is weird. I'm not sure if the developers were intending for this to be a possibility, but by being able to collect this scale, it would have made more sense to me if they placed the Farosh scale there. We can skip ever-freeing Nadra, and we will, unfortunately. It simply saves too much time. Now, one mistake that you should never, ever make when you run this category is shooting Nadra just once. Naydra is about to open the Malice Eye. And if you shoot this Malice Eye here, she will start flying around the mountain, and there's going to be an updraft that makes it so that the grass is weirdly flickering there on the screen, I just realized. That makes it so that you can no longer set up your bomb slides. If you're trying to set up your bomb slides, your bombs will literally just randomly fly away. The reason I took a picture of that location there, of the goddess statue, is because that I realized when looking at it, that structure looks surprisingly Zona. You can see that pillar there. It really reminds me of those pillars with those lotus buds from all of the Tears of the Kingdom locations. It took me literally until this final speedrun to realize this. I'm sure other people have talked about it before, but that's something that really stood out to me, so I needed to take a screenshot there, even if it ended up losing me 0.1 second. Technically, it doesn't lose any time, as the screenshot is instant, but that really kind of stood out to me. We collect the blessing here, and at this point I was nervous. I was 10 minutes ahead, which is a nice lead to have, and the hardest section of the run was about to begin. So you'll see this sequence a lot. I'm going to be warping or starting from the Spring of Wisdom, set up elevator storage, which, like I've probably already mentioned, is an extremely hard trick where you have to just nail your inputs, store the elevator, jump away, bomb blink, so you don't get sucked back into the shrine. And then this structure here also perfectly acts as a BLSS slide stepping stone. We can start it here, step up on the pillar, and this will allow us to slide away. Now, from here, we are going to be skipping all sorts of shrines. The first one being Shai Yotar, which is probably the smallest of the skips. Shai Yotar is usually a shrine where you have to blast a bunch of rubble, rocks, blocking a wind current to kind of line up the wind to activate a shrine. So even though it's not super slow to do, it does save time to do the elevator trick here. And this is going to be our first time using Amiibo. Amiibo allows us to do something really cool. It allows us to spawn fish. Why would we want to spawn fish? It's because we can do the same with fish that we can do with choo-choos. By aiming an ice arrow at the fish, we are going to pause the game and then collect the fish the second after unpausing. You'll see it here. I get a text box for the mighty carp for a fraction of a second, but it freezes immediately after, turning from a mighty carp to a frozen carp. The text box then disappears, which again gives us a super quick text box, which makes Link enter the shrine without the game forgetting about it. Again, without the game unloading it. The reason I actually clipped it here was because I realized that this was one of my first runs playing on my new Switch OLED. I did get the Tears of the Kingdom Switch OLED, and a lot of people have basically talked about the fact that it seems like that one in particular has faster loads than usual. I compared them, and it's not really true against other Switch OLEDs. I think my previous Switch was loading a little bit slower over time, potentially the storage degrading a little bit. That's something that people pointed out can happen, but for the most part it's the same. It's just that load in particular seemed relatively fast to me, which is why I wanted to record it. Again, round bomb being the round bomb, had some issues setting up the slide there in the first place as well, so this is not the best bit of all time. But from here, we're going to be performing one more turn wind bomb. Really nice angle, taking me towards the Ruko Mark Shrine. Usually the puzzle here is a little thorn maze, but by doing a wind bomb, we can go over there. Also, this is one of the first times you could really see me doing a shield serve out of a paraglide. This makes it so that you keep your forward momentum, but you already start going down, which can be the most ideal way to land at times. Five Flames was an absolutely annoying puzzle for me to do casually, so being able to skip it feels great. It's just frustrating. There's two puzzles in this game that feature these blocks with torches that you have to basically turn around to light up out of the torches. This is the better one. Lunar later at the Test of Will is much worse, but thankfully we get to skip that one too. And this is what I mean. So we have just reached the end of a branch, and we are going to be warping back to the Spring of Wisdom. This will happen around 4 or 5 times. I think it's actually 5 times, going to all of the major quest skips I mentioned. We just skipped Shai Yotar, the breakable block one with the wind currents. Next up is Corbucide, which is otherwise known as Eventide Island. Now, Eventide Island is very unique in many ways. First of all, we can not avoid touching the ground on Eventide Island. Because even if we are about to do this elevator skip and enter the shrine, we will be forced to leave the shrine. And the second we leave the shrine, the animation for Eventide Island will play. But we are actually going to take... we're actually going to make that an advantage. We're going to skip into the shrine and then also make the Eventide animation useful for us by doing this specific sequence. So first, we start out storing the elevator and make our way towards Eventide Island, where we will once again do a quick text box, this time with a choo-choo jelly again, because it's a little bit more consistent than the fish. And these shrines, like this one, the one earlier, they are very important to skip. So being consistent by using those choo-choo jellies is best. It's still actually not 100% consistent. Those choo-choo jellies, there's a small chance that even in the tiny text box that you get, the shrine elevator unloads, which makes this run very, very, like a tiny bit RNG dependent, but it's very much in your favor. It's not usually a concern. Now here I make sure to put 2 ice blocks pretty much next to each other and do something called a magnesis drop. By using magnesis and then dropping an item, it drops right in front of you, which gives me enough space to transform this choo-choo jelly into an... I actually end up using a shock one here because I don't get it first try. So I transform it from a shock into a fire one. I get the text box for the shock choo-choo jelly. Because it transforms to fire, it disappears. I am in the vicinity of the Eventide Shrine elevator, so I enter that shrine instead. And this is huge because we have just skipped doing the entire puzzles on Eventide. So this already saved time, despite all of the weird mechanics around the glitch. And you could see the camera was like zooming back all the way to the Spring of Wisdom, but because I was next to the Eventide Shrine, the game was like, oh, Link is close to Eventide, that's where we are entering. And you need to be in a 100-meter radius of the shrine you are entering, otherwise the game will just play a loading screen and then put Link back to where you started. So that's why I landed, where I made those ice blocks, to be just in the 100-meter radius. Now you see the Eventide text box is playing here, and the game is stripping me of my gear. And obviously this takes a bunch of time. We sit through these text boxes. We are not really progressing the game. But, and this is huge, we are going to run away from the island and get a trigger of the game basically asking you if you want to give up. And you will give up. The game doesn't realize that at this point we've already gotten the Spirit Orb from the Eventide Shrine, because the actual quest is still active on it, but we have the Spirit Orb, and the game will at the end recognize that we have beaten all of the shrines. It will give us the gift from the Monk quest. But this cutscene is still active. Now, by giving up, the game doesn't know where we started from, and it loads us back to the origin point that it has set, which is right next to the Muvo Gem Shrine. This is the point that the game kind of like qualifies as the origin point for Eventide. So because it doesn't know where you came from, it instead loads you back to the Muvo Gem Shrine, which is just perfect for us. Because we need to do it next is another modest test of strength that we are going to be skipping the same way as usual. And we are essentially using the little Eventide challenge, especially the giving up part, to move us to where we need to go. Now, if we didn't get the text cutscene, we could have probably like used the slides and be there at the same time. But because we have to get it anyway, we at least use it to our advantage. Now, this is already 2 major tricks out of the way when it comes to elevators, but there's 3 more to come. Next up, I don't manage to get bullet time here to get a wind bomb to Chaskita, which is another major test of strength. And what's funny is that this exact sequence, without the wind bomb, was what I did my casual playthrough. I found this shrine, barely was able to clear the modest test of strength as I found this area quite early, and then found this shrine. I was gliding here all the way, and there's a clip on my Twitch channel, an ancient clip, where without camera or anything, I find this shrine, and my words when entering is I hope this is not another test of strength. And then this text shows up. A major test of strength. And I remember just like not reacting to it and being like, ugh, and then warping away. Because I had just like broken most of my equipment beating the modest test of strength. Was gliding down here, and of course, it was a major test of strength. But this is actually a pretty nice one, because casually you can find some climber's gear here. And I think it's the climber's chest piece, which is one of my favorite armor pieces in the entire game. We won't be getting it here. I would actually consider getting it in the future. It would lose me like 3 or 5 seconds, but you would have more drip. And honestly, that's worth quite a bit. It isn't really, but like, you know, style points matter. And like getting so much style points for like 5 seconds of time loss, I think that's a good trade. From here, again, if I ever return to this category, which right now I probably am not looking to, because we got a brand new Zelda game in a couple days. Now again, it's the same story. We warp back to Jitan Sami, the Spring of Wisdom, and I actually get the elevator storage here. I was gonna say right away, but I just realized I didn't. I actually made a cut here that was barely visible because I had actually exactly the thing happen that I mentioned about the amiibo here in my first attempt. I did the storage. I went all the way to Kaya, which is the shrine with the fragmented monuments, the spirit mirror pieces on the beach. And I did get the quick text box, but the elevator unloaded during the text box. I got unlucky. It always happens on the same frame, so if you have the text box play on the wrong frame, the elevator will unload anyway. And I had to do this one again. So I actually ended up losing some time here. This time though, I will spawn the amiibo once again. Scan it, and again pick a fish that I have not collected yet, which in this case is the mighty Porgy I think I'll use here. Actually failed it here, so instead it will be the armored carp. Get the quick armored carp text box. I am in the vicinity of the Kaya shrine, and I am able to enter it. So at this point we've skipped like 2/3 of the camera. Normally again there's 3 shrines in the game that require you to have the camera. Lagnaroki and Kakariko, as you need to take a picture of the fairy fountain. This one, as you need to take pictures of the fragmented monument pieces. And Shokataton, as you need to take pictures of the guardians. Now, same story. This time, the quest that we are going to be skipping with our elevator trick is Tava Jin, the 3 Giants Shrine. Now, it's not the hugest quest, as you can steal the orbs from the Hinoxes, but it is still faster to just simply activate the to do the trick, so you don't have to go to all of the Hinoxes, because it's not the stealing that's slow, but taking the orbs and bringing them back to the pedestals does lose quite a bit of time. So by performing this trick, you do end up saving a good amount of time. And I think from this point on, we use the Spring of Wisdom for, let me think, 2 more shrines after this one. And then what I described as the hardest part of the run is over. We get to the really quick shrines in the game. But there's still some pretty interesting and unique strategies left before we actually make our way to Ganon. First of all, it's actually this one. Tava Jin has a very nice condition, which is that there is a sign right next to the shrine. And if you activate a sign and then spam the B button as fast as you possibly can, the text box resulting from this is actually really fast. Just fast enough to make the game remember our elevator, like you see here, and enter Tava Jin. Another blessing shrine, and we've just skipped having to deal with all of the Hinoxes. You could see pretty interesting movement occur here once again, which makes me once again question that if I should maybe upgrade my Pro Controller before Friday. In case you're unaware, I'm recording this video on a Saturday, and Tears of the Kingdom is literally coming out in the next Friday in less than a week. You might be seeing this video on a Sunday or Monday, depending on how far I can take the editing. Or throughout the week leading up to Tears of the Kingdom. Or maybe Tears of the Kingdom has already released for you. In which case, you are probably not watching a Breath of the Wild video. But I did want to put out this video as kind of like a final goodbye to my favorite game of all time and my favorite chapter in speedrunning. So far, who knows what Tears of the Kingdom will bring. I'm very excited. This is probably a good shout out again. If you're watching this video all the way until now, you're probably enjoying it, which I appreciate you. I'm glad that you're hanging out with me and letting me explain you how we do shrines fast. Yeah, Rin in general is pretty simple. We'll do a win, pop, and run to the end. But this is, again, a time that I'm going to use to promote that I will be uploading my Tears of the Kingdom casual playthrough, which I'm going into completely blind. I've seen one single spoiler that I'm obviously not going into. On the first day, the game leaked, and since then I've left social media and the internet and have not been spoiled at all, which I'm very happy about. So that complete blind playthrough will occur on my Twitch channel on Friday when the game releases, and then I will upload it to a new YouTube channel called Limcube VODs, which you will find in the pinned comment of this video. If you want to catch up with my playthrough when you have completed your own, that's where you can go. If you want to just have someone else play the game in the background as you play yourself, I will be live on Twitch as well. But we have completed Yarin after doing the Tabajin Giant Shrine. It was just right next to us, so easy for us to get. And we have once again teleported back to the Spring of Wisdom. Now, again, 2 more journeys from here will be taken. Number 1 will be to She Kartha. And this is the Spring of Courage Shrine. And basically the whole reason we are not needed to get a Farosh scale. Now, She Kartha is pretty unique. This is not really any information or whatever. This is something that's not really a big clue, but I will talk about a specific location in when it comes to Tears of the Kingdom real quick, which is from the official gameplay reveal that our Numa has recently done. It's literally about a single location of a single thing in the game. If you don't want to hear this, mute the next 10 seconds of the video. But that's the spot that we are landing on for this SCW. Actually has a new Zonai type shrine directly on it, which I think is really cool. So we're entering essentially a Zonai shrine with this. But anyway, moving on from that again, I think that's a pretty neat detail. It is an interesting location. I've moved on from talking about what is on it now. If you look at it, it actually kind of stands out. It's like this little rock circle here right above the Spring of Courage. And it's perfect that this is actually our landing spot for the next elevator trick. And you can see the dragon head underneath, so we are essentially above the Spring of Courage shrine right now. Once again, a quick amiibo scan to get some fish for us to make another quick text box. And this is where these ice arrows come in clutch. The ice arrows here, because they are essentially instantly changing the fish from its normal form to the frozen form. In this case, we'll just use the Hylian Carp. Hylian Bus. Hyrule Bus, that's it. The camera, they're freaking out a lot, kind of getting stuck on the wall. As it's again trying to zoom back to the Spring of Wisdom, but we are next to the Spring of Courage. From one dragon spring to another, we're gonna be collecting our blessing here. Now, you can see on my splits, it says Warp Jitan's Army, which is the Spring of Wisdom. Exclamation, in brackets, bombs, in all caps. Because the last rune I've just used is Amiibo, what has happened to me sometimes is that I was trying so badly to do the storage glitch, and once I did, I realized that I had the Amiibo rune equipped, so I couldn't bomb blink away. Now, Shokatatone, you'll see a cut here if when I'm about to aim on this elevator. This was the worst split in my run, by far. I made it all the way to Shokatatone. This is the shrine with where you usually have to show guardians, and this is where I actually started getting really nervous because I thought maybe there's still a chance that I throw my sub 5 pace away. I went all the way there, right? All the way, which is half across the entire map. Thankfully from Shokatatone we can move on and clean up some other shrines, but this takes long. Like you'll see, this slide takes long. So I went all the way there. Just before I reached it, I messed up my inputs for the slide. This is something we haven't talked about yet. This slide is not free. You can mess this up. If you ever have your stick hit the neutral zone when you try to do this sliding trick, Link just starts falling down. It happened. I wasn't able to recover in time, and I was kind of stuck, so I had to wind bomb to the shrine, and once I wind bombed there, the trick with the Amiibo failed again. This is a very rare occurrence where the frozen fish trick had unloaded the elevator twice. It's probably like a 5% chance that this happens. I was crushed. Why would this have to happen on my really good pace? It would have been possible for me here to get a top 5 pace run at this point. Currently the fifth person on the leaderboard is Johnny with a 4:43, which would have still been possible. I could have easily made it, had like a 20 plus minute PB here, but this split really ruined it. I had to go all the way back to do the slide that you are seeing now to finally enter the shrine. And at this point I was like, okay, let's try to keep it cool, let's play it safe, we don't need to get top 5 right away, let's just shoot for the sub 5. And thankfully on this attempt it did end up working. Here you'll see it, usually Loon is around here and she wants to see the pictures of the guardians. We don't have a camera, so we were not able to take any pictures. Instead, I freeze this, the salmon, and then the shrine this way. And not only is this a shrine that's underground, but it's another modest test of strength. For some reason, this particular test of strength is slightly differently constructed than the rest of them. If you're trying to do the normal clip setup, I got really lucky here, bouncing off that pillar, which is still enough to skip the cutscene. If you do the normal setup here, you still can clip through the pillar. So instead, you need to actually approach the pillar. Usually I approach them from the left. And you'll see it here happen because, see, I almost forgot about it. I realized, oh no, this won't work. You have to approach the pillar from the right side. For some reason, that pillar is constructed differently. I don't know what it is. There's actually some shrines that have these unique, like, kind of quirks about them. Shokataton is one of them. And then once again, even though we just slid across the entire map just to enter the shrine early, we will use that travel time to our advantage to clean up the other 2 Farron shrines that we still need to do here. First of all, Kao Makak at the Highland Stable, and then second of all, another minor test of strength, Pumak Nitai. I did a little bit of a shield surf there intentionally to get rid of the skew, as I need a different skew for the Pumak Nitai shrine soon. Just wind bombing across the highlands here. And you can already see the next shrine up ahead. We are approaching the final third of the run here. But this is by far the fastest one. We'll probably hit Shrine 80 at around 3 hours and 30 minutes runtime. Which means that the last third is only around 90 minutes long. Doing 40 shrines in 90 minutes. Which, again, this is what I basically explained. We are now done with most of the elevator tricks. There's actually still 4 of them left, but they are a little bit quicker. They are not from the Spring of Wisdom anymore. And here I make my way into the Farron Woods, over this mountainside, and then a mid-air wind bomb to reach Pumak Nitai. And then basically from here it's cleanup time. Starting in Hebra, I'll do the Hebra shrines I wasn't able to do yet as I prioritized the elevator trick segment. Clean up a little bit of the Gerudo Desert, even some of Elden Volcano, and then slowly and surely make my way to Hyrule Castle, because we're getting closer to be done with the shrines, but there's still some work to do. Now, if you look at the timer, you can actually see that after this next upcoming warp, the Rock Uvok shrine, which is probably my favorite shrine name in the game, has an boomerang next to it. The reason that boomerang is there is because there is a convenient Lizalfos sitting right next to the shrine who has a Lizaltri boomerang with it. And because we are not doing Vanaboris in this game, in this category, we have to fight Thunderblight at Hyrule Castle. And the boomerang is one of the best weapons to deal with that enemy, as you can break his shield from range. So once he flies up into the sky, you can break the shield quickly with boomerangs. And then in my case, I can just spam him down with more ancient arrows, which is why it is actually worth to collect this one. I tried to time a shield surf here to make it perfectly through this gap, while still basically keeping some forward momentum. I will then use the shock arrow to disarm the Lizalfos, drops the Lizaltri boomerang. And you can see it's quite a quick detour to make. It is worth it to make the Thunderblade fight a little bit easier. Rokovok, big surprise, another quick wind bump. The architecture here is a bit weird, but usually you end up nice and snug in this little corner and can just claim your reward. From here we need to make our way to Shar Gemma. Shar Gemma is an interesting shrine in this run, as it's probably the only shrine we do casually, at least mostly. With exceptions like the blessings, I guess. But we wind bump onto the top of the these little rooftops here, which have this perfect little step up for us. We have enough height to squeeze through these cliff sides, and as soon as we've cleared them, you'll be able to see that Shah Gamma, the shrine on the top of the snowfield around these 3 Lionels, well, the Lionels are around the shrine, is just inside. You can even already, you got a glimpse there of the shrine we're doing next, Kazatoki, the last of the 3 maces. Like here you could actually see that I didn't land perfectly next to the terminal of the shrine, and it loses so much time because you not only fly past it at first, but then you have to run back, and it ends up losing like 5 seconds or something. But here we just pick up the metal cube, stasis it, like yes, technically you're supposed to carry it up all the way, but this is still glitchless. You just use runes to your advantage, and people sometimes argue that wind bombs are no glitches. You just use bombs to your advantage. This is not true. The reason wind bomb is even possible is because of a miscalculation that takes place when you basically have these bombs interact with each other in bullet time. The same reasons tricks like the bullet time bounce work. Here you could actually see a wind bomb failing due to lag. If you have a keen eye, you could see how the frame rate was dropping once I was placing these bombs. This is something that can commonly happen here. I try to counteract it a bit by looking up as I have them explode. I will basically say hi to one of these Lionels, passing them on my way to the maze. And one nice kind of like ability that we have in this run is by having this amount of stamina, it's quite easy to do a bunch of mid-air wind bombs. I think this third one here was actually a little bit of a mistake. Yep, another one of those bad mid-airs. So I have to land on the maze. Made sure that the square bomb was not out somewhere, something that I usually recommend. And because I've done this run a lot, I know exactly where we have to enter to make this maze as short as possible. And again, it's English, so you'll only see a single text box here. Now this is a great part of the run for Tears of the Kingdom Enjoyers. We have another Zonai maze, followed up by the Typhlow Ruins, which is presumably a pretty important location in the sequel, as we've seen it look a little bit different in trailers, a little bit less dark, but that will be what we'll do next. And again, going to be skipping the Barbarian armor, which might disturb a casual player. This is obviously a very useful set, but will make Ganon easy enough. Here we'll use the staircase to our advantage, doing a wind bomb up to the top of the maze again. And it's almost like they took consideration of us, because there's a perfect stepping stone here that we can use to set up another slide. And the Typhlow Ruins are just up ahead, enshrouded in darkness. And one interesting fact here is that they will actually slow you down. So as soon as you enter the dark area, the speed from the slide will get set to 0. Now once again, you see a blue text box show up. And if this was any other language, we would get a second one. I will then do a blind mid-air wind bomb. Literally, this is, again, because I've done them so many times, this will allow me to go, basically get back to speed, make it to the Hinox here a little bit quicker. I will not waste any time in the sense of fighting the guy. I will just steal the orb instead and then activate the shrine. Very, very interesting location. I really like this one casually as well. Even though I was streaming my first completion of this shrine, and people got really upset at me because I kind of just ran into this Hinox by chance and did actually steal that guy's orb even in my casual playthrough. I think it almost seems like this guy is harder to wake up than the average Hinox. I don't know if this is true. I would like to look into this, because even I like whistle sprint past him in this run and he never really wakes up. So I wonder if there's like something about that guy that makes him harder to wake up. But thankfully in the speedrun it's also really easy to steal. We did it, and we are going to be warping back to Hebra one last time. This is going to be our last branch throughout the Cold Mountains, which will kind of lead us down, but at first up to the peak, and then down the mountain towards the Forgotten Temple, where this next branch will end. But next up is Goma Asarg. I mentioned this shrine a little bit earlier, as it's another major test of strength, but this one we will grab the content from its chest, which is going to be a Royal Claymore we're going to be using at the final boss fight. A mandatory use of fire arrows here, unless we wanted to clip into the shrine, which is not recommended, as unfreezing this terminal is much quicker. Now, Goma Asarg is another one of those shrines like Shokatatone I mentioned earlier, where the normal clipping spot just doesn't seem to work great. People have said this is maybe because of the water on the ground, making the skew setup different. But to me, it is easiest to go on the right side here and use the right clip, the right pillar. Actually, that's what I usually do. And I just realized I used the left pillar anyway in this run. You know what? I think a lot of this is still placebo. A lot of runners will agree with me, though, that Goma Asarg seems a little bit off sometimes. Looks like I just ended up using the normal clip here. If I was to make one statement, and I'm sure most speedrunners will agree with me on this one, this game is infamous for having strats work for you for multiple runs in a row and then randomly stop working because of something you're doing slightly different. Consistency isn't very easy to accomplish in this speed game. From here we'll make our way down to Lano Ko with a very nice and fast wind bomb. Now, Lano Ko for me casually was a big disappointment because you just find this shrine with the Sheikah sensor quite easily, and then yes, you have to endure the cold water for a little bit, which obviously in the run here is no problem at all with all of these fairies that are just flying around me. If you wanted to guess, by the way, how many fairies do you think will I end up using in this run? If you don't know the exact answer, you could keep your guess if you want to. We do a classic little old comment. If you want to write a comment to this video, which by the way, if you do, be careful. If you're watching this video before Tears of the Kingdom comes out, don't read the comments, just leave a comment. You know, it's scary out there when it comes to spoilers. But if you want to, leave a comment with how many fairies you think I will have left right now, and then I'm about to tell you how many fairies you usually lose. But anyway, we made it through Lano Ko, an easy blessing shrine, and we'll make our way to Jihara. I will give you the fairy answer after the shrine, because there's a really cool strat here. Jihara usually has you find out what track you are supposed to place the snowball in, and we will not do that. We will use an amiibo and not for the elevator trick this time. I'm scanning the Guardian amiibo here. And what the Guardian amiibo allows us to do is to use motion controls. And it's actually kind of weird to set up at first. And I mess it up on my first attempt. But if you use the motion controls like this, fast enough, you can literally trick the game into thinking the snowball just hit the door. It's very fun. And it allows us to enter Jihara a tiny bit quicker. Now, fairies. Usually in a speedrun of this, you lose around 150 fairies at most, which is ridiculous because you're literally burning on fire. You're like in the cold, but in most splits from shrine to shrine, you do like 1-2 wind bombs and you don't even end up losing a fairy. It is quite ridiculous to me how little fairies you lose. It's between like 200 and 150, depending on how you play and your route, I guess. But it's quite wild how little fairies you end up using. It's still a lot, don't get me wrong, but it's still much less than I thought. Now, after Jihara, we're gonna make our way to the Snowfield Stable, Rin Uya, which is a shrine that's near and dear to me. Unfortunately, the YouTube video I did on the shrine didn't do as well as I hoped it would, because I really liked the idea. Essentially, I did a YouTube video where I tried to beat one shrine, being Rin Uya, in 40 different ways. With glitches, without glitches, and that was Rin Uya. I think we came up with some really cool stuff in that video. Didn't do as well as I wanted it to be, but that's fine. I ended up failing this wind bomb here, which is really annoying. This is actually a really tough wind bomb. You see, there's only a tiny gap here between the ice and the rock, and you'll see it on my second attempt here. It's possible to just not get bullet time here. The way bullet time works is you need Link's feet to be above ground by a certain amount, so you need to time that bow press just right. I end up getting it here, and not the exact angle I wanted to. Normally this is supposed to send you zooming towards the Snowfield Stable Shrine. But we eventually got there. Now this is as easy as it can be in a speedrun. You wind bomb to the left. Sorry, that is the right, and then you are done. Now from here we use the height advantage that the snowfield gives us. It seems from its name that the snowfield is kind of low, it's just like a field. It's quite flat compared to the rest of the Hebra Mountains, but it's still relatively high up in comparison to the rest of the game world. So we're gonna go to this little stool that is surprisingly usable as a step up spot for a slide and get a bunch of speed. Which, this is dangerous because the ground is higher than Link. So if you don't get enough speed, you get stuck here. But if you do get enough speed, which I was able to do here with nice flicking, we have a perfect amount of height to make it over the Serene Stable to the Monya Toma Shrine. From here, you can access the Forgotten Temple and another quick shrine on the way. Almost got another unloaded low poly shrine there, but not quite fast enough. I do want to give a shout out to my favorite speedrun strat in Monya Toma, where you pick up the orb, jump, attack it with the hammer, and it flies perfectly to the end of the shrine. It looks amazing, and if I was sure at this point that I was going to get sub 5, I would have went for it, but I just cared about speed at this point, so I did the wind bomb, which ends up saving some time. Now the reason I was scared here to not get sub 5 was because there is still 4 elevator tricks yet to come, and they can lose you a bunch of time. If you ever mess up the storage trick, you end up getting sucked back into the shrine, and you lose you can lose up to minutes. Like in the Guardian picture shrine, I lost like 4 minutes. It is scary, so I wanted to make sure that I go as fast as possible to get as much time save as I can, despite the fact that I was getting closer and closer to the end game. Magno Ra is a super quick shrine, not much to say. It is weird how this one and Lano Ku, the shrine in the cold water, are so close to each other. 2 blessings that are just kinda hidden, but not really. And then there's shrines that have you do huge puzzles, like Toyasa, the one at the Thundra Plateau, that has you do a big puzzle on the outside, and then there's another big shrine puzzle inside. But that's okay. From here we get to go to the Forgotten Temple, and this is one of my favorite movements. We take this little step here, which perfectly catapults us with the slide through the wall, and we make our way towards the Forgotten Temple. Now the Forgotten Temple is a little bit too low for us to just simply slide in. I wish that was possible, but thankfully the Forgotten Temple has some more stepping stones for us to use. So by landing in here, you can already see there's some rubble right in front of me that I can use to set up the next slide, which perfectly allows us to clear the entire temple, not having to worry about any guardians. I think at the end here, there's one shot that actually gets fired, but it misses entirely. You can kind of hear it explode in the distance. Very excited to revisit this location, Tears of the Kingdom. I wonder how that one has changed. We haven't really seen many guardians roam the world, so I wonder what has happened inside here. And that is Rona Karta, Shrine 88, and the end of our journey through Hebra. From here, we're going to be cleaning up the area on the top right. You can kind of see we're still missing some stuff in Akala and Death Mountain, but yet again, these are extremely quick shrines. After this, we're doing some last cleanup at the Dueling Peaks and Farron, and then we are on the real endgame. Now, Qua Rame is basically very far below the area we just started from. I got a really nice wind bump here, just clearing that little rock pillar and getting great speed towards it. And this is, for speedrunners, usually a little bit of a scare, because it can be difficult to nail the wind bump here. Thankfully, I did do that. And even my landing here was pretty nice, not too far away from the terminal. The problem here is essentially that sometimes when you are trying to hit this wind bump, because of the way Link's ragdoll works, being kind of random, you can actually reach the shrine, bounce up against it, and then fall back down. I was relatively close to that here, but relatively safe at the same time. It wasn't the worst, so I think it was still visible what can be scary about this shrine in particular. And then from here, and this is a lot of this route revolves around this fact, what we are allowed to do here essentially is we can use the height to our advantage again. Unfortunately, I got stopped here and I actually got lost. Even after like 6,000 hours, I got lost wind bombing the wrong way. I thought I had to go to this rock, but no. I was like, wait, where's the shrine? Isn't it? And then I realized it was to the left of me. But we'll use our height advantage here a lot. Whenever we can start somewhere up high, it's usually nice because we don't have to clear big mountains and we can just do one fast angled wind bomb or slide. Tamul also has a special place in my heart. This is arguably the easiest shrine in the game to clear casually. To the point where it's actually a little bit confusing. Let's just take a look at it. Yeah, throw one bomb. That's pretty much the objective here. I know there's more to it, and there's actually a pretty cool puzzle here in casual playthrough where you are supposed to grab a metal key using magnesis. This is something that a lot of people thought was really cool, me included. But when you just want to beat the shrine, it's quite simple. There's actually another candidate for the easiest casual one coming up at the late game, around the like shrine 100. I'll try and highlight that one too. Two nice wind bombs here, making them to Mohakid, otherwise by the community referred to as Stasis 2, as the mechanics of the shrine are basically just a more intricate stasis shrine. But we will not bother with the stasis rune and instead quickly wind bomb to the end. Looks like we get the rare monk cutscene here. I was trying to be thorough with removing the loads, but it looks like I still did here, but at a different section, which made it so that we got a little bit more monk dialogue. Now we are off to Sadahash. This is actually a surprisingly well-hidden shrine. A great showcase of how well this world is crafted. It's just in this little alcove here, and it's really hard to find. From like a bunch of different locations, you can't really see it. So you either have to use a Sheikah sensor or be in just the right position to be able to see it. Now here we'll do an interesting one, but we jump to the left side, which just gives us enough like room to accumulate enough height with this wind bomb to clear that wall and make it to the Sheikah monk. There's a lot of shrines here in this area that kind of evoke strong memories from my casual playthrough. Next up is Zikasho, and it is not close, it is by far my least favorite shrine in my casual experience. And this is just shrine itself. If you wanted to do full shrine experience, it would definitely be Dark Chokar, the shrine where you have to escort Oki. That one just made me angry and mad at the game. But Zikasho, in terms of its interior, is the worst. It is one of those motion control puzzles, and I don't know if my angle on this wind bomb here was able to showcase you which one this is, but maybe you already remember. It's not the simple maze like in Hateno, it's the one where you have to get 3 orbs in 3 different like alcoves, different spots. And me, not being the most patient person as I like to go fast, you can maybe get a quick glimpse at it there. And also not having very like steady, like still hands. That's not something that runs in my family. So I hated my time with this shrine. So every time I do this wind bomb, I leave the little smile being able to skip that puzzle. Now here, round bomb at its best, and round bomb meeting wind. Something that happens quite a lot. I was forced to use the square bomb here. I could have blown up the round bomb, but it's already, you can see it. It's like on a journey. Not sure where it will end. So I was forced into using the square bomb, which was probably the faster choice here. Again, it is very noticeable that it accelerates quite a bit slower. So whenever you can use the round bomb, you want to use it. But in this case, it was probably a better choice to just pick the square bomb instead. Thankfully, I did not get punished by the rain there, which is something that even a speedrunner cannot escape from. I needed to do that extra climb there. Sure, I could have jumped away and done a wind bomb, but it probably wouldn't have been very good there. So I'm glad that I only had to do one jump. Rain can still be very punishing. Now, in this instance, I actually failed the wind bomb, and I decided I'm going to fight this Guardian. And this is because Daheisho, which is the shrine I'm in right now, is a minor test of strength. I didn't fight it perfectly here, as these Guardians can actually still be pretty hard to hit, and they do shoot you quite quickly, but you can see that with like 2 or 3 shots, I guess in this case 4, as the multi-shot bow there didn't get me the hits I wanted to. It's not the end of the world. Like, you'll end up losing 10, maybe 20 seconds, but it's still better than reloading and potentially failing the wind bump again. So in situations like this sometimes, especially if you have the gear, it can be a good decision to just fight it. Now we're getting close though to be done with Test of Strengths. The next one is another modest one. We do have around 28 or so Test of Strengths in the game, so of course they are a common occurrence. We do have to eventually beat them all. I think there is like 2 left at the very end, but after this area, after this branch, which we will end at the Spring of Power, which is a major test of strength, we are gonna be close to done with them. I think there's like 3 left at this point. Kenai Shaka is actually quite dangerous to do in this run. It's because the area this shrine is kind of like tucked away in is considered to be Zora's domain like area. Which means if you haven't defeated Varuta yet, which I have not, it will essentially always rain here. And it can be a little bit messy if you do not break that wall that's kind of like hiding the shrine immediately, because you can slide down the wall and it can be quite awkward. One little fact that I'm sure maybe the GameSpot series about things you didn't know has covered yet, but maybe you haven't seen it, is that even if you are in a dry area, like under a roof, if it's raining in the world you are in, you will still get the debuff on climbing. You won't start sliding down or slipping down, but you will still lose up more stamina every time you do a climb jump. It's actually a pretty weird hidden mechanic that can really mess you up. And you'll see, rain is basically everywhere on the forecast here, because we did and will never in this run free Varuta. Well, technically we will. I guess by defeating Ganon, all of the Divine Beasts will be freed at the very end, but we won't do it in the normal means. Now here, this is a successful super launch, something that you don't see that much in this run. I intentionally made the game lag and then pulled my paraglider on the first frame after closing the menu, which was a lag frame, which confused the game. And 1.5 times speed launched my wind bomb. Carmael is hidden behind another slab, similar to Ka Okeo earlier. I just realized that both of them start with Ka. But there's also Ka Ya, which is definitely not under a slab, so I guess that's just random. Very, very simple shrine. There's another diamond in here, so sorry, casual players, avert your eyes. We won't be collecting it. Ritaxumo is a classic. It's kind of encapsulates one of my favorite mechanics of Breath of the Wild, which is looking at the map, finding things that are interesting to you, and then just going there. Ritaxumo is the shrine on the big sandy spiral in Akala. I at first had some issues here. I went for a really fast wind bomb, but it was barely not high enough to clear the cliff in front of me, so I had to deal with some awkward backups. But the cool thing about Ritaxumo is that we have a great strat for it, which you've already seen, but again, it's going to be with a twist. Now, you see it slowly approaching up ahead as it's rainy at this part of the gameplay. This spiral being very visible on the map was something I just had to check out, and I was rewarded by finding a shrine here, but it was kind of tedious to do. You had to carry this orb all around the spiral. Thankfully, we have a more efficient way of carrying the orb these days, which is that the orb kind of acts the same as the round bomb. So by lining up with this sign and finding the right step-up spot, we can go into a slide with the Sheikah orb. And that basically allows us to not only move Link towards our goal, but the orb as well, and even in a pretty efficient way, without having to go around like 5 times. Unfortunately, I did not get the hole-in-one, which is something that you can do there. It's a style strat, which is obviously fast if you get it, but by no means is it needed. Now Ritaxumo is another blessing shrine. We are also getting closer and closer to the end of those. As you can see, well, maybe you actually didn't see it yet because I didn't specifically mention it, but every shrine name on my timer in the bottom left has a number assigned to it. This is shrine 97. We're getting close to the 100s, which really starts the true late game of the run, as these last 20 shrines are incredibly quick. But we do have to wrap up a color here. First of all, by doing Katosa Org. It's a shrine next to a stable, as we have already seen quite a bit. I think at this point, we are almost done with all of the stable shrines. There's one at the very end. I think shrine 118 is the one next to the outskirts stable, right next to the Great Plateau. But by then, we will be on our way to Hyrule Castle already, as we finish up these last shrines. And then after Katosa Org, which is super fast and simple, we'll make our way to the last Dragon Spring, which we will also wrap up. As you can see, slowly things are wrapping up. We'll do our last blessings, our last test of strengths, and our last Dragon Springs. We are not quite done, though, with the elevator tricks. There is still 3. No, there's still 4 yet to come. They are all kind of stacked in the last 20 shrines. Now, thankfully to Zvanima, the Spring of Power is enterable by placing it in Ral's scale, which we also got at the very beginning of the run from Hyrule Castle. I do like doing this wind bomb. Very nice speed here, gliding through Akala. A lot of people have mentioned that they think Akala is one of the worst regions due to common thunderstorms. I love Akala. I'm really confused reading these comments. I think it's beautiful aesthetically. Let me know what you think. This spring, obviously, the huge Skyward Sword throwback as well. Now, because it is the Spring of Power, the developers decided to place a test of strength in here. I guess that is more fitting after all, instead of just getting another random reward. Because you do have to prove your power first. And at this point, after this one, only 2 tests of strength remain. My Radiant Shield at this point was starting to get a bit damaged. I will actually lose it at the end of the run, but the main purpose for it was just doing these quick shield serves, getting these skew setups, and then actually specifically for that one elevator trick all the way back in Kakariko, because I had to jump out of the shrine with the shield instead of bombing Link, as the bomb would have just blown me back into the village. Now, one more time, we'll walk back to Calm Urok, the shrine that we did at nighttime earlier. This is where we will clean up the Dueling Peaks section, and then also the last shrines in Farron. Then Farron and Dueling Peaks will be done, and all that's left is essentially Gerudo Desert and our pathway to Hyrule Castle, with a quick exception of the Thundra Plateau, where we activated the cutscene for earlier. We do have to clean that up. Now here we'll use once again a little ore, which actually acts perfectly as a little stepping stone. That way we can slide across all of this forest here around Fort Hateno, which is another location I'm excited for in Tears of the Kingdom. I cannot wait to get my hands on the game, re-exploring all of these places that I know in and out from playing the game so much. It's just very fun. Here you can accumulate a lot of speed. Our goal here is the Totosar Shrine, which is kind of tucked away here next to the Stalnox location. Now, I almost got this rock wall here to be unloaded. It loaded just in my face. It doesn't actually matter though, because we do have to break it anyway when we leave the shrine, as we are going to continue from here. This is a shrine. I held the individual level world record for multiple times. It's very fun to set up a really fast wind bomb. This was not one of them. I was still choosing to be a little bit more safer here, because I did still know, despite the fact that I was still keeping my 10-minute lead, that a lot of difficult tricks are still coming up, especially those elevator tricks. Those SCWs that I was aware of. My goal here was to get a nice turn wind bomb, but unfortunately I got slowed down a little bit by the wall on my left. So I decided to get more speed again by mid-air wind bombing. The Hama is another one. I think this is probably my second shrine ever in my casual playthrough, because I actually missed the shrine that you could just see on screen, Ridahi, tucked away in the Dueling Peaks. For some reason I missed it. I just walked by it, because I was walking through the Dueling Peaks in my casual playthrough on my way to Kakariko. I did not beat the shrine this way. I really like doing the shrine with Cryonis blocks, which is surprisingly a not super bad option for the speedrun if you know where to place them quickly. These double wind bombs though will still save you time. From here, I will make my way to Ridahi. Unfortunately, I did misaim this wind bomb here and again kissed another rock wall. And maneuvering around on them while it's raining is generally not a great idea. And here, this is probably the most common mistake that will happen in speedruns. If you fail, this is what we like to call compounding time loss. If you fail your first wind bomb, then it's very possible that your square bomb sits out somewhere in the open. You do not think about it, and then you try to do your backup wind bomb, and you can't, because your square bomb is still randomly chilling somewhere in the world. Very, very frequent and unfortunately frustrating mistake, but we did make it to Ridahi. Another fan... What is the opposite of favorite? A commonly hated shrine among the Breath of the Wild speedrunning community, because this wind bomb I just did is very rare to get first try. Thankfully I did, because my movement to it was kind of bad. You can see how low the ceiling is here, so if you get any bit more height during the wind bomb, you will hit the ceiling, start falling down again, and you will not make it to the monk. Now the countdown begins. 4 more SCWs, 4 more elevator tricks. This is the next one. It's a pretty small one, and it gives us a nice insight on how this trick works. So again, try to do these really fast, like 20 inputs here to jump to the left, fall damage cancel, store the elevator, jump away, bomb blink. And currently we are at the Ridahi Shrine, right? Which is like tucked on the left side of the mountain here. And after I store the elevator, I look away from the shrine, and then all I do is I glide to the other side of the river. By now looking back into the shrine, the game will remember that I was supposed to enter it, but I will instead enter the shrine on the very top of Dueling Peaks, because that's the elevator I was too closer, because the shrine isn't actually like underground. Like height doesn't matter for this glitch. In terms of like coordinates, like X and Y coordinates, I'm closer to the shrine on top of the peaks. So that's the one I entered, and I could basically skip having to climb all the way up here. And not only that, I'll be able to glide over to Chez Vanir now basically instantly, and then also use this shrine as kind of like a point to continue from. Now, there's not much to say about these shrines. They're simple wind bombs. I can already talk about something that unfortunately happened here in the next split, which is the Quakar Natar shrine. This is a shrine that plays you the Song of Storms. It's where you're supposed to basically have lightning strike the shrine that's kind of like encapsulated inside a rock. Normally, when you speedrun, you set up a slide here, which is what I'm about to do. And you slide all the way to the rock, which, because you move there so quickly, will be unloaded. And you are able to simply enter the shrine. The reason this didn't work in this run is because of the mistake I talked about earlier. So the time loss from not being able to enter the robot photo shrine, Guardian photo shrine first try, was even bigger. Because this is around the area I fell down previously, and that made it so, and you can already see the rock in the background, that the rock was already preloaded. This is kind of how the game works. It remembers certain things, and because it was loaded at one point of my playthrough, it was able to load this rock in even quicker, and that made it so that I ended up having to literally just sit here and wait for a lightning strike to happen, which is why I'm going to be making a cut here. The thing is, there is technically a clip that you can do to clip into the rock and reach the shrine early. I did not know how to do this clip. It's a pretty weird one at that, and usually the rock is unloaded, so I had to take the time loss, and again, I started getting a little bit nervous. I was just 10 minutes ahead. I thought I was safe here, but I just immediately went back into the 9-minute area, knowing that I still have to do 3 elevator tricks. Now from here, I made it to the Shodar Sar Shrine, where I technically had a bunch of time saved, but I had big issues with the rain here, losing some time to getting the right wind bomb, so there was another quick cut here, which made it so that I actually did not end up saving any time here. Shodar Sar is a pretty mechanical shrine. There's either a wind bomb that you can try to do to make it to the end of it, but it's not super consistent, again, because the ceiling is quite low. I decided to show off a different strat, which I really like, which is to intentionally get hit by this bomb explosion as you jump into the piston. The piston will hit Link as he's getting hit by the bomb, so he's in ragdoll state, and that makes you fly really far, basically to the opposite side. I almost messed up here by clearing the fence and landing in the water. I would have been very upset. Thankfully, I actually still ended up saving around 40 seconds. I could have saved even more time, though. I could have probably saved another 30 seconds. Back in 10-minute time save territory again, though. Now, the last shrine in Farron is Shai Yuto. Actually, another one at the stable, this time the Lakeside Stable, I think it's called. As it's at the Lake Floria area here. And the interesting part is, again, that this is another one that's like kind of in a cave. You'll notice that a lot of times when we do these branches going from shrine to shrine, we will end our journeys in one of these cave shrines, as there is not really much left to do from here. There's not many fast other shrines to reach from here. Big surprise, Shayuto consists of another wind bomb. There was another cut here, as the first wind bomb was a bit of a fail. You could actually see Link look at this Sheikah lamp. For some reason, he's like obsessed with them, and you can easily miss wind bombs because of this. Okay, 3 more branches to go. Each of them start with an SCW elevator trick, and they will all be from our Ice Shrine. We are in the true late game now. The pressure was on. Now, first up, I needed to clean up the To Yasa Shrine, which was the shrine at the Thundra Plateau. The shrine where I intentionally watched the cutscene earlier to be able to do what I'm about to do. Struggling a little bit here with the storage mechanic, but eventually getting it done. And then one thing that makes this ice shrine quite nice is that this natural bridge here has these nice little stepping stones for us. Not only that, but if you step up on them, they even like kind of send you towards the right direction initially. Now, one thing that makes the Thundra Plateau unique is that you don't need a text box to activate the elevator cutscene. I think this is because there is a little bit of a like internal check happening in the game that will check if you have already watched the cutscene for the shrine. Since we did watch the cutscene, the check will still happen, and it will happen so quickly that the game, like a text box, will remember the action of the elevator. You can also see kind of like the funny shape of this thundercloud here, kind of like a big sphere. I recently saw this thundercloud in the official art of the game, which looked quite more intimidating. But here all we need to do is land in the vicinity, and the cutscene will immediately play. And because we are close to the Toyasa shrine, that's the one we'll enter. One other shrine that's tucked away in the close vicinity to this one is the Dunbar Targ shrine. It is at a very random location at the bottom of the, is it called Tanaga Canyon? It's not just called the Bantha Canyon, is it? Oh yeah, no, it is. It is the Bantha Canyon, but there's like the Tanaga Golf Course or something, right? Any Breath of the Wild nerds that can correct me. Unfortunately, this was, oh god, I was at this point, like, I really wanted to get sub 5 for a long time, and this is why I said I could do so much better. I was making so many sloppy movement mistakes at this point where I know I don't have to do them. I can easily get like a 4:30 run in the future if I just play clean, but again, at some point you have to say goodbye to a game. I'm excited for Tears of the Kingdom now, and I'm glad that I still managed to hit my goal, but this movement was obviously anything but great. It was also nighttime, and Stahl enemies started spawning, and like keys started spawning. Again, at this point I don't need to say anytime I make a cut anymore. You can see the full run and see this in its full misery. But eventually we made it there into the canyon. I did have my Radiant Shield break here unintentionally, but I didn't really need it anymore at this point. And here, this is what I mean. Like at this point I was just like, oh god, what am I doing? So many sections are going so well. I'm getting all of the Guardian cuts, shrine skips for the first try for the most part, the difficult elevator skips. And then I'm making sloppy movement mistakes. But you win some, you lose some. Dunbar Targ is actually a quite precise turn wind bomb. It's easily done that you overshoot the cage of the monk here. Then you have to do it again. Thankfully, I did manage to do this first try. Now, 2 more branches left. Both of them start within the Gerudo Desert area. We will finally make our way to Rakatsunzo, a extremely crucial elevator trick. As this will allow us to go into the Sand Seal Shrine early. So performing this trick first try saves like literally 20 minutes. Thankfully I was able to do so. I didn't get the storage on my very first attempt, but this is almost as good as it gets. Again, the elevator trick is not even the risky part. The risky part is getting that text box just right. One thing that I almost messed up here is, if you look at my splits, there is a electric choo-choo jelly next to the shrine's name. And the reason that's the case is because that's how I plan out to usually do it. I'm planning to use the electric choo-choo jelly text box to enter the shrine. Thankfully, I remember that I had a little bit of a mistake at Eventide and already used the electric text box there, so I needed to use the ice choo-choo jelly text box here because that was the only jelly I didn't discover yet. Thankfully I did remember in time. So we kind of glide over Gerudo Town. Thankfully if you go fast enough, they don't like notice a link and randomly kick you out. That would be tremendously bad. Again, we just land in the vicinity of the Sansi Rally. I placed the shock jelly, realized, okay, I already have this one, I need to make it to ice. And then I pick up the ice one, transforming it back into shock. Boom, quick text box, loading into Rakatsunzo, saving 20 minutes of time. Now from here, I just needed to clean up the Gerudo Desert and then make my way to Hyrule Castle while cleaning up the final shrines. And again, we will never actually enter Gerudo Town in this run. By doing all of these skips, we never need to even purchase the outfit. And here you can see it perfectly. I don't have the outfit, I just wind bomb over the town. And by going fast enough, you do not get kicked out. If I stayed in there a little bit too long, I would have gotten kicked out though. At least we got to hear some Gerudo Town Night, which is probably my favorite soundtrack in the game. And at this point, it is hitting me a little bit that I'm realizing that I am recording the final, probably final, at least for a long time, but likely final Breath of the Wild video on this channel. Which, it is hitting me now. The Tears of the Kingdom week is approaching, and man, do I love this game. I love this game so incredibly much. Not only have I played it for over 6,000 hours, I've made so many amazing friends and memories in it. I love the characters and stories in it. I love the music, and I cannot wait to dive blindly into Tears of the Kingdom this Friday. And I'm absolutely sure that a lot of people that still watch my channel are the same people that are just obsessed with this game. Maybe some people are watching this right now that recently have gotten back into it because Tears of the Kingdom is so close, but oh boy, this is an incredible game, and it's been an honor to share so much of its intricate mechanics and stuff with you guys, because this is just something I'm really passionate about. But I just got maybe a little bit emotional listening to Gerudo Town Night, which is just a lovely soundtrack. It is kind of lo-fi, but it's very special to me. Anyway, we are getting to Kematsus, which is the second shrine that, in my opinion, is tied with the other one earlier for the easiest shrine to do casually. Again, I think it's the most effective if you just watch the strategy without giving any commentary. Yes, I did not have to switch my arrows back and forth there. I just wasn't sure if I was already on the shock arrow. I was. And that's literally all you need to do. So let me know what you think is harder, throwing a bomb or shooting a shock arrow. I'd say it's pretty close. Now another thing, and this is a great example of the compounding time loss again, because usually when you play perfectly, it's actually not this late when you get into the Gerudo Desert, and you don't have to deal with stall enemies yet, but I did. And thankfully RNG is unavoidable sometimes. This was a great split of getting bullied. 2 stall enemies spawning, and then I'm trying to wind bomb here, right? But Link is instead like focusing on the stall enemies. Very frustrating. They will actually spawn again when I get closer to Tokayu. You cannot escape all of the RNG in this run, unfortunately, despite how well you play. Thankfully here they did leave me alone for a second, so I actually was able to win them towards the shrine Tokayu here, which is guarded by Molduga. But then the second I land, they do annoy me again. Now here, I need another workaround of having a bad bow. And that's going to be knowing exact visual cues. I had to wait here for the Molduga to kind of disappear to make sure I hit the shot just right. And you see, that fire arrow was able to light up both torches at once. And I have a second visual cue for this one as well, aiming on top of this hill in the back. Boom, and this will also light up both torches. Get a little bit of a Molduga jam in here, another great soundtrack. Gerudo Desert is full of them. Moldugas and great soundtracks. Now, weirdly enough, there's actually a pretty solid bow inside this shrine, which is a bow that I only came to appreciate over time, the golden bow. It is metal, which makes it good for the volcano section of the run, and its zoom feature can actually be quite useful, especially for shooting from mid-air. But we don't need it at this point anymore. We are 113 shrines into the run with only 7 to go. Oh yeah, I was jamming out to the Molduga music a little bit while trying to get a nice slide of the elevator. Thankfully, this elevator is just high enough to clean these dunes of sand on my way to Havakoth, a shrine with the last skeleton. Well, there's 3 skeletons, but only 2 of them have a shrine, like, inside of them. So that will also be our last leviathan or skeleton that we'll be visiting. And at this point, I was feeling quite confident, right? 10 minutes ahead, going into the late game. I knew I had one more elevator trick to do, but I could technically mess it up like 3 times and still be on pace for sub 5. But I was a little bit scared about this shrine, because there's a shield clap that you have to do here in order to go fast, and can be a little bit finicky. And something happened here that almost made me drop my heartbeat. Quick little skip here using a cryonis block to climb up to this ledge. And then I had to do the same thing I usually do for Test of Strings. I was ready to clip. And that must be one of the most unfortunate timings ever. Thankfully, I had already fully unequipped my shield when I did that jump, so I still had my skew, which allowed me to still clip into the pillar and finish the shrine. But I was so scared that I had to load back on the outside, because the skew that we use here to get to the end of the shrine is obtained on the outside. And here we are, the final warp of the game. This one takes me back to the ice shrine one more time to set up the last elevator trick and then beat the last 6 shrines in the game. Once again, the storage trick is really difficult. Side hopping, fall damage cancelling, activating the elevator, jumping away, placing a bomb, blowing it up. 20 inputs in around 2 seconds. I did manage to do it, and was on my way now to the final elevator trick, Shrine Yoluna. This shrine is used, we use an elevator trick for this shrine because it's a test of will. Normally we have to stand on some hot platforms there for minutes, only for the shrine to just spawn out of the ground. Now, again, and this was kind of a trend in the late game here, I was kind of over it at this point. I knew this run wasn't really what I wanted. It wasn't like the God run. But I just wanted sub 5, but my movement just kept getting worse. Not only did I have a round bomb incident here, which made me have to choose the square bomb, but the square bomb accelerating slower also forced me to do more unintentional flicking. Like at this point, I should have already been at top speed, and I went to ham, and what happened? I dropped my slide. And this is something that happens if you unintentionally touch the dead zone of the stick. I had to do what I had to do instead is try and do a mid-air wind bomb, realizing my bomb was still out here. I eventually made it work and did a little bit of a cut there again because I think the first mid-air failed. This was just annoying. At this point I was like, I got the sub 5, let me get to the end. And I am bittersweet about this run because I've been practicing this quite a bit, and when I'm on a good day and I get all of my movement right, I can easily get the top 5 position of this run. I can get a sub 530. I know confidently in terms of mechanical skill. But at this point, like I said, like I wanted sub 5, I got it, and I wanted to showcase this run one more time. Yeah, that's why this is the run I'm using. Tears of the Kingdom is literally coming out in like 6 days, so it's time to take a little break, play some other video games, relax, and then play a brand new Zelda game. Now for this one, all I need to do is pick up the frozen fish because I'm using Kataka, which has the big unload radius without the quick text boxes. At this point it's probably confusing again, but again, using a text box to enter Yoluna. That was my words are leaving me. I've been recording this for like 3 hours. It has a pretty interesting strat. We have to use some motion controls here to align these wind gusts. And then last but not least, the worst of those fire cube puzzles is about to appear. And normally you have to use motion controls here to light all of these torches on fire. I'm sure people hated this casually, me included, but we have wind bombs. And man, shout out to wind bombs. We already got a little bit, I mean I did, kind of like emotional about this game, nostalgic. We are about to lose wind bombs, and don't get me wrong, I want that to happen. People ask me all the time, are you mad that there's no wind bombs in Tears of the Kingdom? Which at this point I don't know if there is, because I haven't played the game, I haven't looked at the leaks, but we kind of know that there's no remote bombs in the game, and I want them to be gone. I want new speed tech. I want to play a different game. I don't want to play the same game with slightly different wind bombs. So very glad that they're gone, but they were also incredibly useful for us. Now here we slide over to Geno, a very intricate shrine casually with lots of like conveyor belts, but hey, there's that wind bomb again. About to use that one more time. before we get to the last 4 shrines. On the move is where we are, and the way this entire route is constructed is that this last branch, while getting the test of will like elevator trick that I just did, actually kind of like lines up perfectly, because the shrines that we still have to clean up lead to Hyrule Castle. So the last shrine of this route is going to be Katachuki, a minor test of strength right on the outskirts of the castle. Now here I got a pretty fast wind bomb towards the castle, our penultimate test of strength. As Katachuki, the last shrine, is literally a test of strength. Thankfully, at this point I was pretty confident I got it. Because I got my last elevator trick out of the way. I knew that these tests of strengths, even if because these wind bombs here, they are easily failable. I was performing really well with them, hitting most of them first try. They're not easy to do. Probably the hardest wind bomb to do in speedruns. But I knew at this point, even if I was to fail them, I had my infinite ancient arrows and my my multi-shot bow to at least back them up quick enough to not lose 5 minutes. At this point I had to lose 5 minutes in order to lose my sub 5-hour pace. And just like that, we have entered the final 3 shrines of the run. Rota-O, the shrine next to the outskirts stable, Kamyatak, the giant trial of power, and then Katachuki right next to the castle. This is a pretty satisfying movement to do. You start at the very bottom of this lake. I'm actually also surprised how late I found Dark Castle, that test of strength I just did in my casual playthrough. It's technically right next to the Great Plateau, but at the same time it's like really well hidden. And here from that pillar you get just enough height to make it to Rota-O, which is a very nicely designed shrine casually. It's like kind of like a compact, interesting shrine where you can like rotate its main parts around. When you see the interior, maybe you remember it. You won't see it for long though, because we'll be wind bombing. So yeah, after all shrines is really a run all about getting to the shrines more so than actually completing them, as the interior strats are fairly simple. Other than maybe the test of strengths. Now, next up is a Trial of Power, which casually is a ginormous shrine, one of my favorites. There's so much to do that it almost feels like a dungeon. And we'll be sliding there. Already see it, well, you can't see it quite yet. Now you can kind of see it approaching. And this might have one of my top 3 favorite wind bombs. Together with Makara and Totosa. I know these names don't necessarily say much to you. We got an unloaded version here, quite nice. But you'll see why, just look at the angle you can get here. Like, that's just beautiful. I know the shrine is obviously huge and there's so much to do here, but it does make it quite satisfying to get this beautiful angle right to the monk. And that's it. Katachuki being the only shrine left to do. And again, we'll be doing a quick wind bomb over to one of these structures here. And right at these garrison ruins, we can use the ruins themselves to do one final step up and do the last slide of the run. And there it is. Katachuki, the final shrine in this speedrun, shrine 120. There's actually going to be a cut here, because of course I had to mess up the cutscene skip on the very last shrine. But that's okay. Lost some more time here, but all that was left to do after this was to beat Ganon. And I was feeling pretty confident, as I was approaching the fight with around 3,000 ancient arrows. there's the last clip. And you'll also see, once we target this monk here, I did make sure to not cut it off there to get the confirmation that this was, in fact, the final spirit orb to obtain. You have, at last, conquered all of our trials. Having fulfilled our purpose, we monks bestow upon you this, the warrant of the true hero. You must now depart for the Forgotten Temple, which is a line that I never understood, because in order to even get this text, you must have already been in the Forgotten Temple, so I wonder if this was hinting towards some cut content, where there was actually something else in the Forgotten Temple, which is quite interesting to me. I'm actually curious if the final shrine was supposed to be somewhere else and they had an idea to put something else in the Forgotten Temple, which maybe it was a DLC idea, which maybe made it into Tears of the Kingdom. But we'll see. That's it. 100 shrines are completed and I'm technically done with that objective, but like I explained, we do have to beat the game here. And as this is the last video on the channel about Breath of the Wild, it's fitting anyway to end it one more time with beating up Calamity Ganon. And all of this starts by doing some wind bombs, because I do have a bunch of arrows, but I don't actually have a great bow yet. Yes, the Forest Dweller bow is alright. I already have my attack up potion, and I also have that diamond circlet on, which is going to increase my ancient damage by 20%, which also counts for ancient arrows. Normally, of course, they're one-shot enemies, but against bosses, they do have a flat damage addition. I think ancient arrows have a flat 50 damage that they have on top of their normal arrow damage against boss enemies, and then I think the Blights and Calamity are additionally weak to that. So they are quite efficient. Stack that with the 20% damage modifier from the circlet, the 50% damage modifier from the potion, and the Royal Guard's bow that I just picked up, which comes with 50 base damage, and then also headshots, which double our damage again, makes it this incredibly powerful weapon where you can probably deal around 300 or so damage per shot. I think it's around like 280 or something against Calamity Ganon. And that guy is going to have 8,000 HP, so it does make sense that we do have to stack up here quite a bit. Now, a little bit of a volume warning. I will have tuned the volume here, but the Windblade skip in this category gets quite loud. And this is mainly because we are using an Ancient Arrow to perform it. This will make it so that Windblade will literally die multiple times before we get to skip the cutscene. You are about to hear it. I will tune the volume down if it gets too loud, but still... If you have this on in the background, maybe you're just chilling, probably worth to warn you. Now, if you have never seen this, I just shot... Okay. Right. I just shot the arrow into the arena, pre-firing it in a way that it got stuck mid-cutscene, constantly damaging Windblight, allowing us to skip that fight entirely. We also do this in the any percent category. Now, Water Blight is surprisingly still fought with the Claymore. This is mainly to preserve durability for the bow, as I mainly want to use that for other parts of the boss fight, like Phase 2. Now in Phase 2, we are going to be abusing a mechanic that Water Blight has. Usually after a certain amount of damage, he gets up from the ground. But by shooting him into the face once, we can get some height, jump away from the wall, and use bullet time to make sure that we get enough damage in there before he can dissolve again. Immediately going over to Fire Blight. Now Fire Blight Phase 1 is also where we see the power of the setup. Look at this damage. 1 headshot, 2 headshots, 3 headshots. And that's Phase 1. And this is the power of these Ancient Arrows in combination with the Circlet and the damage buff. And keep in mind, these Blights are not like the Divine Beast versions. They are the Sanctum versions. Each of them have 2,000 HP. So in fact, against Fire Blight, these shots just did over 333 damage. Probably more like 350. And we do the same thing for Phase 2. After knocking him down with a bomb, 3 more shots will do the trick. Thunderblight in phase 1, we kind of want to manipulate to get the right opener in phase 2. So we will still start with some Claymore swings. I actually did miss a hit there, which is a little bit annoying. This actually did end up biting me in Calamity Ganon as my Edge of Duality broke early. So actually quite frustrating. This ended up losing me around 20 seconds in the Calamity Ganon fight, doing that one unintentional extra slam hit. Now this is the reason I picked up the boomerang back in Hebra, if you remember. I will equip it now and literally only use it to break Thunderblight's shield. If you use Magnesis here, he won't stay up in the air like he does now. But because I use the boomerang, I have him basically fly up in the air here and get a nice amount of damage in, cleaning up the fight. And that's it for the Blights. Now we move on to Calamity Ganon. And my durability of the Royal Guard's bow is already pretty depleted. I think I can still perform 2 shots here, but now the Forest Dweller bow will do the trick. And you can see how much damage it's doing with every shot. This is a 15 damage base shot bow, but each of these arrows is getting that 50 damage Ancient Arrow effect applied to them, which makes me zoom to these 4000 HP. That's only phase 1 though, as in phase 2 we still have to nail that shield parry, which under the pressure I did not. And I made the mistake here to not simply walk to the right a little bit to set up the stun lock a little bit easier. So what happens here is what I basically talked about. I use an extra Claymore hit against Thunderblight, and my Claymore breaks early here. This makes it so that I don't get the stun lock. And because I don't get the stun lock, I have to do another parry right now. And this is what I meant. This is where I made the mistake. I had to run back away from him here earlier. If you run away from him while he does an attack like this, he will give you a laser afterwards, which I had to parry again. Thankfully I did it. To then line up another stun lock. Unfortunate to lose some time in the very final boss fight. Well, there is Dark Beast. But thankfully I was able to recover and start my stun lock. And with the final spin out of the way and the Claymore ultimately breaking, Calamity Ganon is once again defeated. I actually ended up only losing 2 seconds here, as my previous Calamity fight was also not very good. More potential for one day maybe, or maybe not. As I will be picking up the Bow of Light here, and once again, for the final time, challenge Dark Beast Ganon. There's not much to say about this fight, as you probably already know. All you need to do is ride to the correct side, in this case the left side at first. Prepare your shots and hit them. And then last but not least, there's maybe one other important factor, which is going to be to wait on this side of Dark Beast. If you wait until he turns around, you get a little bit of a nicer positioning and faster shooting timing for the other side. You basically don't want him to be turning around like 360 degrees. Also, attack up in this part doesn't matter. My attack up potion is about to run out. You will still do the same amount of damage. Would be funny if that wasn't the case. Now we need to wait for the belly shot before we go for the final shot, ending the speedrun. I'm intentionally aiming basically a Dark Beast's crotch here because his belly kind of moves that way the second the weak point appears. So despite the fact that this looks pretty weird, it is actually an ideal strat, and all that's left to do now after 4 hours and 53 minutes beating every single shrine across Hyrule is to do the final shot against the Malice Eye inside Dark Beast Ganon, going into bullet time and finishing the run at a 4:53:13. And that's it. That's my final speedrun on Breath of the Wild on this channel. All Shrines, my favorite run in this game. I can't believe we got here. We've been talking on this channel, on my Twitch channel, about Tears of the Kingdom for 4 years now, and the game is coming out this week. I will be streaming it on my Twitch channel, like explained. I will be uploading it on my VODs channel. And this channel will, in the future, also continue to showcase challenge runs and speed runs with commentary and explanations, just like you're used to from this game. I'm very excited to be diving into them. So if you haven't subscribed yet, this would be the one time to do it. We're very close to 100,000 subscribers, which I'm incredibly grateful for. That being said, I want to thank you one more time for sticking around or finding this channel and watching this video until this point. Breath of the Wild, like I said, is an incredibly special game to me. I'm super, super passionate about it. The second all of the Tears of the Kingdom trailers dropped, I've been kind of like going crazy thinking about all of these theories, and I realized how passionate I am for this universe, which makes me happy. And it makes me happy that I get to share this passion with you. I'm super, super excited to hear from all of your playthroughs. I'm sure I'm going to be watching multiple playthroughs of the game because I love seeing people get excited for that game. But with that being said, this was the final All Shrines run on the Limcube channel. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments after Tears of the Kingdom is out. I might revisit them. Again, probably won't be reading many comments before the game comes out, but with all of that out of the way, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next game.